So this is crazy. Okay, because
Ocean 2, so number 0.
It's just easier. It's not really
Open Public Meetings Act was emailed to the Asbury Park Press, the Co-Star, and the New Coaster on December the 13th of 2022, that a copy has been placed on the bulletin board in the Borough office, and that a copy has been filed with the Borough Clerk. As a courtesy to the public, this meeting may be attended via Zoom. If for any reason the Zoom portion of this meeting fails or is disconnected, the in-person meeting will continue and action can and will be taken, providing there is a quorum available. Mrs. Margot? Absent. Mr. Noble?
Here.
Mr. Gubatose?
Here.
Mr. Weber?
Here.
Mayor Fox?
Here, Council President DeMarco had a late-breaking home emergency, nothing critical, but she may or may not join us, but she had something that just came up 20 minutes before the meeting. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our 13th meeting of the year. As I've said in all meetings thus far, we may disagree on things during these meetings, but we should all be constructive, not disagreeable. Ask everybody to gauge their tone in these meetings. We're all neighbors, and also the council has some rules of engagement that hopefully we'll try to follow. I want to make one quick special announcement for those who might get on and off the Zoom, and that is we made a decision to shift the King Lear performance that was supposed to be Friday, Saturday on the promenade to the firehouse for two reasons. The weather situation, primarily around rain and thunderstorms, and also the temperatures, which isn't as bad as last year. For those who remember last year, it was about 95 degrees for those 2 or 3 days, so we shifted to the firehouse. So we're trying to make the appropriate changes and announcements on the website, Facebook, etc. But that's just a late breaking. I'll mention it again at the end of the meeting for those, as much information as we can get out on that would be appropriate. The first thing that we have a lot to cover tonight, but I think we get through it pretty well. The first thing we have to cover is it's a grant application, public hearing for improvements to a recreation center park. I think Ben Matlock's here, our CME representative. He's going to present that for us. So Ben, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. Give me 1 second. Can everybody see that? Okay. Thank you. So we're here to talk about a Monmouth County Municipal Park Improvement Grant. This is a brand new grant program being offered by Monmouth County. It's almost identical to the Monmouth County Open Space Grant Program, which is a maximum $250,000 grant. The difference here is that this is a maximum $500,000 grant. It's a matching grant, 1-to-1. Applications are due the 13th, which is tomorrow, so it's very good that we're able to fit this in. The grant requires a public hearing, requires a supporting resolution by the governing body, which was already passed at the June meeting, and it's for improvements to the Recreation Center Park. Okay. Here's just a couple of photos of current conditions at Rec Center Park. The fact that it was raining helps our application. You can see the courts are in need of repair. You have some tripping hazards in some of the walkway areas, and there are other improvements that are needed such as upgrading some of the amenities, the fencing, and some trees that have outgrown their space. So our proposed, the eligible activities for this grant program are park, recreation, open space purposes, new facilities or renovation of existing facilities, and then not applicable to this project, but something the council may want to note and keep in mind for the future, because it's a new grant program, dredging to improve access to recreation areas, potentially for any lake improvements in the future. So the scope of work, I kind of already went over. Improves the pedestrian walkway, new benches, trash receptacles, other improvements such as fencing, resurfacing the existing tennis and basketball courts, and the intent is to provide pickleball striping as well. And then the playground, if you remember seeing in the first slide, had some drainage issues. We'll do some drainage improvements near the playground. Our current cost estimate is $510,000, so a matching grant for that would be $255,000. This project also previously received a local recreation improvement grant, which is a grant through the DCA for $74,000. That's a 2023 grant that we just received this year, so we're hoping to add to that with an additional grant. Here's just a quick kind of sketch of what the improvements would be. On the left there is in red is the tennis court, and then the right is the basketball courts, resurfacing both of those. It's not a line for it, but we would include tennis and pickleball, or potentially just pickleball if that is the preference of the borough. And then improvements to, like I said, to add, replace benches, picnic tables, trash receptacles, walkway improvements. On the right side there, you see those X's. That's a location of a couple large trees that are in between the walkway and the baseball field. They started, lifting up the walkway, causing tripping hazards. We could remove those, replant with new trees, and improvements to the playground and drainage area. That is really it. It's a quick presentation, but this is an application we're going for, and we're looking forward to getting this project moving forward. Any questions?
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate this. Looking forward to this. Do you know what kind of trees those are?
I don't know exactly the species, but we'll have our landscape architecture department evaluate them, see what the best replacements would be, and go from there.
Okay. And it's a lot of money. It's a big grant. They're decent sized trees and they shade. I know what they're doing to the bricks and whatnot. So if they're planted, I'm kind of hoping we don't get a little, right? And I know it costs money, but if we can get bigger trees that are already throwing some shade, that would be good. Yeah. Because this is used by the school, and it'd be greatly improved. It might be used more, and if it's just sunny and hot and no shade, that would be bad.
That is definitely something to take into consideration. And if there's anything we can do to save the trees, we will look into that as well. Once we get actually into a design, that's something that we'll certainly do.
That would be a first choice.
Sure. Yeah.
Any questions, Glenn?
So, Ben, yes, thank you for this presentation. You mentioned the total project cost will be $490. It's matching grants, so we'd be applying for a grant cap that $245.
510 was the estimate.
I'm sorry, 510.
Yes.
So it'd be 255.
255, yes.
How does the $74,000 earlier grant fit into that? Is that just additional dollars we'd have to spend, or is that also matching?
I believe that would count towards the matching portion of the municipal portion of the grant. The county provides, you know, a one-to-one match. I don't think it has to be 100% municipal dollars. If you have additional money from other sources, you can use that. And the application itself asks, you know, what other sources of grant are, you know, funds are being used for this project. So that's already in the application, so the county is aware of it.
I don't know when we ultimately decide on pickleball versus tennis, but I'd love to get feedback from residents.
Sure.
I don't play either, but I have family members and I have friends in town who have found, you know, pickleball fanaticism, and I don't know how often our tennis courts are used. I don't know how many tennis players utilize these courts versus, you know, whatever clubs they might belong to. So I'd love to get some information as to the prevalence of the respective sports. My sense of it is pickleball's skyrocketing and perhaps tennis is waning a little bit. The other thing is, you didn't mention anything about the actual playground equipment. Has there been any assessment done? I mean, I was just there this past weekend with a few of my grandchildren. One thing I noticed was most of the equipment that we have is, I would say, for older children. You notice that when you're chasing around a little 3-year-old who's trying to climb on things that you're afraid they're going to break their neck on. So, is there an assessment of the existing equipment just in terms of its own, you know, current condition, as well as could there be any consideration given to expanding the equipment, perhaps have a smaller area for smaller children?
Sure. So the application, or, you know, the initial discussions that I had about this project probably over a year ago, were replacing the playground equipment wasn't included. It's certainly something we can do, and you definitely can get equipment that is suited for younger children, you know, 2 to 5-year-olds and 5 to 12, or, you know, wherever the age ranges are. That's definitely something that can be done.
And again, this is just me throwing out ideas, because especially if we have this other $74,000, whether we either apply it to our side of the matching, or whether we have that as additional cash, CACG, to put towards some potential equipment expansion. You know, I don't know what the answer would be, but I'm thinking if we're doing this, we should probably consider, you know, all options before we finalize. So, how does any additional consideration the council wants to give this fit into your planning in terms of grant applications, grant awards, so forth?
So I think we're submitting the application tomorrow, and the application's already prepared and you know, pretty much finalized. We just need to submit it after this meeting. And if we want to add to it, I don't see why we can't. If we want to, you know, ask for or include replacing the playground equipment, replacing the, you know, you have mulch there. If you wanted to go with a rubber safety surface or just mulch, whatever the case may be, we can. I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that.
But we replaced the playground equipment up at the beach, and it was $100,000. So how does that fit into you have plans for all that $510,000, correct?
Well, if we could ask for an additional increase in grant.
So you said that
because
the matching is up to 500.
The match is up to 500, which would be $1 million project. So if we ask for 600, or if we say that the project is 600, we could ask for 3.
Do we still get it if we're increasing the amount? I mean, is this like an automatic?
It's whatever you ask for, and then in addition to that, when it actually comes time to utilize the grant, if you say it's going to cost 600 and it only costs you 500, you're only going to get reimbursed for the 250. So you can ask, you know, you want to ask for as much as you can.
if I can just explain, I've had a couple of discussions with the grant administrator on this project. Receiving the grant is not a given. It's a competitive process. This application was before this agency last year. It was not approved last year, not because it wasn't a worthy application, only because they considered other applications to be more worthy. The fact that this is more or less the second year that this application is being submitted increases the probability of it being approved. And as long as Mr. Matlack and his staff had the opportunity to be able to make a modification before the submission tomorrow, then I think that will happen. And it is clearly better for the borough if those modifications are made now than if they're made later, because later means it'll be $1 for $1 as opposed to 50 cents for $1. And so you're indicating that those modifications could be made regarding the playground equipment for the application, and it still would come under the maximum that is permitted for the submission of the application.
Correct.
And then we have, on the Lake Terrace project, we already have a 3 to 5 year old piece of equipment in mind, so we have that costed out. I don't know if you have it off the top of your head or not.
I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but that is, that project is funded through a Monmouth County Open Space Grant from, like you said, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so they do fund, playground equipment. That's the type of projects that.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. I was just trying to get from a perspective of what the cost of it would be.
Oh,
Yeah, that's where I was coming from.
It's definitely under 100,000.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the number is though.
Okay.
I know we were also recently we're looking at purchasing equipment for, yeah, Lake Terrace, thank you. And that was smaller children equipment size, so I don't know.
That's what you said. Yes.
Oh, that's what you said. I know you're talking about the beach, sorry.
No. But actually, to that point, we've gotten requests between the new equipment on the beach and that swing area to put something for younger kids for the same reason. I don't know if it's 30,000, 40,000, I'm not sure what it is, but that's something we're pursuing in the fall.
I have one last question, and that I want to bring us back to the trees. I go to this park regularly. I honestly just haven't focused on the trees, but as soon as you say, there's a possibility of removing them, my ears perk up a little. Are these large, mature, shade-giving trees at this point?
They are pretty large trees, yes.
Okay.
We're not talking about all of them.
No.
No. We're talking about.
There were, I believe, 3 that were right along the walkway that were, causing the walkway to heave a little bit. That's why they were being called out to be removed.
I know we've got that substantial wooded area, to the east, but regarding those 3 trees, again, have you guys looked at whether or not there's any workarounds, something that, I don't know, we could reroute the walkway a little bit, or do something that would not cause us to have to remove the trees?
We haven't gotten to that point yet, because it's just a conceptual plan and just really strictly for budgeting purposes at this point. But once, if the project moves forward into a design, we'll actually survey everything, figure out how much room we have, where we can potentially reroute the walkway if that's, what we want to do. And of course, I'm sure a presentation such as this will happen with a more polished plan before it moves forward.
That's it, my questions, thank you.
I just have one. I think you answered my question with that. I was going to say, who picks out the design as far as the benches, the tables, receptacles?
Yeah, so we would come up with a design, meet with your administrator, your rec director, and figure out, you know, if there are borough standards we need to adhere to, you know, we'll do that. And then any input from the mayor council is always welcome.
Yeah, I know we talked about Main Street getting a little zhuzhed too. It'd be nice if we all work together.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Definitely.
Okay. Do you have a public comment on this?
I think you need to open it to
Yes.
the
I'll
public.
open it up to you. Thank you, Ben. Stick around. So, if anybody has any public comments they'd like to make, yes?
Tracy Davis, Real Board. The playground equipment, will it be ADA compliant?
It would-
It will be, okay.
Yes.
Nancy Meadow, Ocean Park Condominiums. Thank you for the presentation. It's the first time I've ever understood visually or mentally anything you've done. And thank you, Mr. Weber, for remembering the $106,000 playground that we installed without competitive bidding, along with the extra $10,000 with the chairs that were supposed to be temporary. Which gets me to, it makes me very nervous to say that our BA and rec director would do the aesthetics. Aesthetics are very personal, we can never be agreed on, but we've had employees and select residents that repeat the process that don't seem to be aligned with the taxpayers' vision for our town. In addition, I have a problem with doing this tonight and submitting it tomorrow. Why is the Bradley Beachway always at the last minute? It's quite offensive. Mr. Gubitosi, tennis and pickleball. Currently, I only play tennis because I cannot find anything about pickleball on the website other than we have it. It's not funny. It's really a repetitive issue. And I also have a problem where I'd love to upgrade facilities. And yes, one budget crisis, so can we spend $250,000 or not of our own money? Okay, back and forth. My biggest problem is that we do not charge for services here. So again, it gets into the running of the town. So if we have pickleball and or tennis courts, are they open to the whole world? Are we gonna charge a fee to use court time? All of this comes into it. It comes into whether or not I think as a taxpayer, I choose to spend $250,000. So I hope you kind of take that into consideration because we have a very excellent record of repeating past mistakes. And I'd really like to see us move beyond that. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Brigitte McGuire, 610 Brinley Ave. I remember the last playground, the beachfront playground, I had mentioned the foundation where angels play. One was done in September in Seaside Park, this past September. The council worked on it. It was donated from a family who lost a child. As long as it is done in honor of someone, that foundation will do a playground. So instead of us looking for so much grant money and having to match it, maybe we can look for ways to just replace equipment like Seaside Park did and just pay and do it in honor of someone and have this foundation do it. So if someone can please look into that foundation because I think we could do it at a much lower cost. Regarding the old playground, for $100,000 to still have mulch when kids are coming off the beach barefoot, it was a huge problem. I thought it was a very poor upgrade, keeping mulch there on a beachfront playground. So keep that in mind that we're a beach town. A lot of people are coming off the beach without shoes, and kids might not have shoes or they're packed in the bottom of a bag. So if you can, please note that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening, Linda Duffy, 312 Brindley. I think with the pickleball and tennis, it's just as easy to convert to a pickleball court on a tennis court as long as the markings are there. That's not an issue. There was some scuttlebutt many moons ago about knocking down that greenhouse and using that for another function, that maybe we should add that to the grant. And I think, thank you very much for your presentation. And thank you, Brigitte, about that foundation. So maybe we should look into that and knock down that greenhouse. It's broken windows, God knows what's in it. I see all kinds of stuff when I go here and there and look. But also the bathroom in the rec house, the rec building is, one's broken. Can that be fixed? Maybe, from this grant? All right, thank you.
Yes.
Shauna Greenblatt, Channel 414 Monmouth Avenue. I also feel it's a challenge to have this addressed to council in a public meeting the night before it's submitted. It just makes it very difficult. Couple things. In terms of the trees, if these are healthy trees, we should do our best not to remove them and to work around them. And furthermore, if they do need to be removed, we have a Shade Tree Commission and guidelines. So as John had mentioned, you know, we have to make sure that, you know, the requisite number of trees replace whatever large trees are removed. But if these are healthy trees, it would be a shame, given our low tree inventory, to remove perfectly fine trees, especially in a park. Trees and park go together. So for the sake of, for the sake of the walkway, I think it's more important to try and do, you know, a walk around. I'm sure that something like that can be done, and I think, you know, that's important. Do we know that, I think we ought to be strategic if we're going to spend any money on this space. So I think it's great to consider the tennis courts as pickleball courts if that's something that the community responds to instead of tennis, whatever. In terms of the basketball courts, talk about resurfacing. I don't know if the equipment needs to be replaced at all. Are the basketball courts used for basketball? Are they just used for hanging out? I don't.
They're used extensively.
I'm sorry?
They're used extensively.
For basketball?
Yes.
Okay, so that's great. So that, the question is, do the hoops and the posts and all of that need to be replaced or upgraded in any way? So that's another thing to take a look at. I also would bring up the same thing about the greenhouse, which sits there not only like an eyesore, but a danger. I know there was a lot of community discussion about Bradley Beach having a dog park. I think that's something to consider in this space. In the space where the greenhouse is, or on this space. I don't know what the insurance issues are with it. There could very well be a plan that's considered where people pay a fee to use the space. That fee goes toward certain kind of coverage, that there are volunteers in the there are other communities that have dog parks where there's a sense of responsibility with proper signage. You know, I don't think we're going to be sacrificing any of our oceanfront for a dog park, but this is definitely a dog community. And if that's something that the community feels strongly about, I think that's something to consider as we're looking at spending money on this property. So that's really what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Julie Matitis, 605 North Avenue. I think we really need to consider the greenhouse as a potential parking area if that is knocked down, because our seniors and handicapped people, it's very trying for them to get to the rec center. It is a very long distance from Main Street or from the parking lot. So it's not conducive to the seniors or handicapped people. Or just if someone's renting it out in bad weather, it's very hard to get to. And also, the aesthetics. I'm very concerned of the fact is who is going to make the selection on the benches, colors, what we're doing, schematics. That needs to be cohesive around the town. So there needs to be a bigger plan as to what we're doing, because our design should be very cohesive completely around town. So we need people who really know, not just someone saying, oh, I like this, I like that. We actually need people who are professionals in this area to help us with that, whether we have, a group in town or designers or something of that nature, but that is also something to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one other thing is, we really do need to look into getting the park equipment donated. We should, there are so many avenues to go through. We should not be paying for parks, whether it's on the Fletcher Lake Park or anywhere when we do have abilities to get parks donated. That's definitely wasting our tax monies, especially since we're facing 11.6% tax increase. So we have to cut costs wherever we possibly can. Thank you.
Yes.
Eileen Shishias, 112 Fifth Avenue. Just a question about the tennis courts and these facilities. Could anybody, now I don't know the answer to this, but I know Crescent Park in Seagirt and the tennis courts in Spring Lake. Are they residents only, or do residents have preference to them? Can anybody find out about that? And how can we, if so, how can we protect our residents to have priority over these courts rather than just people just walking on off the street? I think, and I thoroughly 100% plead for a design expert for the aesthetics of this community. We are in dire need of that. And if anybody knows me, you know I've been on this bandwagon for years. Do not put Band-Aids on wounds. Do not waste money with inferior quality things. You can't afford to just keep replacing them and have them, or that they do not last for a long period of time and they look terrible after a certain amount of use. Thank you.
Yes.
Thomas J. Colan, 612 3rd Avenue. Mr. Matlock, it says here improve the drainage around the playground. What would be the avenues to do that?
Most likely it would be under drains in the mulch area, collect the water, suck it down into the under drains and pipe it to a storm water system.
Railroad tracks?
I don't know exactly where, but that would be the idea.
Yeah, if I could just make a note, like the gutters and downspouts and everything on the current rec building are not in good shape. And a lot of water is coming off of that. And also, there's no encumbrance to shedding water off of the greenhouse. So that's another avenue, which it may be, as per one of the previous speakers, I mean, it may be good to turn that into pervious coverage and maybe make it part of the park to reduce the outflow drainage. So I appreciate it. Now, will it be just an improvement, or can we figure that it's going to be gone?
What's that?
The puddling that you reflected in the pictures.
Oh, it would be, no, it wouldn't just be improved. The intent would be to eliminate it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, we'll close the,
Can I ask one more question, Mr. Mayor? Hey, Ben, I see you're taking a note, but can we go back to the slide of like what we can apply for this money, just to cover that, I don't know which slide that was, so. Improvements, park, recreation, open space, historic preservation purposes, you said these are $500,000 grants?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to see that again, and then, we probably need to get this off the screen to see if anybody else has questions. I think that's what Michelle was talking about. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you got it right.
It was a series of like mouthing and hand gestures and that. Okay, there we go.
There we
What do you
go,
know?
okay.
yeah.
Okay, looks like we have, two people on Zoom that I can see. One is Kristen Mahoney. Good evening, Ms. Mahoney.
Hi, Kristen Mahoney, 200 Lorraine. When we brought this up last week about the grants, I thought it would be more about just improving, making things for safe. So I figured there must be a plan for this. And in that plan, I for a dog park. I think the area by the greenhouse would be a great area for that. And when it comes to the insurance around that, I don't think there really is much of an issue because most dog parks are kind of an agreement between or among the people who bring their dogs there. It's kind of, you know, use at your own risk, and anything that happens among the dogs is kind of among the dog owners. So, you know, other than it's, you know, having a fence and a double enclosure, it's, you know, most towns have them without a problem, and it would be a great idea to have some kind of pay thing for people in the town to use, and I'd be very happy to help facilitate that, because I really think having a dog park in our town where most people have dogs would be fantastic. So, thank you.
Thank you.
See any other hands? Nope. Okay.
Okay, we will close the hearing, and thank you, Ben. And move to the next agenda. Thank you all for your input. We certainly have some work to do once we hopefully get the grant. Let's go to, next item's a workshop, and it's kind of a update workshop on short-term rental ordinance discussion. Greg, I don't know how we want to do this, yourself summarizing, or Councilman Tosi, or?
I would suggest that Mr. Cannon, who drafted
sorry.
the ordinance,
Okay.
ought to summarize it.
Okay, no, thank you. Forgot, Greg was a part of that too. So for people's information, this has been going on for some time, you know, since last year, really. There's been a small group that was assigned to take an assessment of this, and I think we're just trying to take the appropriate steps. We're not taking a complete bite of the elephant. We're taking it one bite at a time, or maybe 2 or 3 bites at a time. So I think the group was Greg Cannon, I think Councilwoman DeNovo, I think Councilman Gubitosi, Greg Ferenbach,
And Mr. Murphy.
and Paul Murphy. That's correct. Yes. Yeah. So Greg, if you could just do a quick summarization, and then if anybody has questions or adds.
Sure, absolutely. So this little bit of history in Bradley Beach. Rental properties are generally regulated through the certificate of occupancy process, which is resulting in a lot of inspections, a lot of duplicative inspections when there's shorter term rentals. Also, the group that was put together, and also other council members expressed this as well. You know, the idea of a one-day short-term rental is not conducive to the community or quality of life in the neighborhoods, extremely short-term rentals. So the first thing that this ordinance does that's important is that the minimum rental in the town is 6.5 days. So someone can move into an Airbnb and leave an Airbnb with a gap on Saturday for a turnover, you know, a week-long rental. But no one can essentially rent any rental in the town shorter than 1 week. That's a key principle change that's a new regulation. Number 2, the importance of public safety, fire, you know, life safety hazards in any rental property in the town, whether it's a large apartment building or whether it's a single-family home. It's obviously of importance to the community, particularly in a community where houses are close together. Fires are no concern and that sort of thing. So this does not change anything having to do with the CO. So all the rental properties still have to go through all the life safety checks, all the health code checks. They're still subject to the same code enforcement. But to enforce all those codes that I just listed off, you have to know who's renting and where. And so this ordinance, the major portion of it, establishes a landlord registration for the town. There's currently a summer rental registration that's on the books in the town. It's for a duration that's May 15th to September 15th, which doesn't necessarily capture the entire rental season. And so this requires all rental properties, no matter how large you are or how small you are in the town, to register, and with the information you'd expect, who tenants are residing in the home. You have to comply with all the other codes that I mentioned to get the registration. An important aspect of this that is not included in the ordinance that I would add to the public's benefit and for the council members who are in the committee's benefit is, if you're a residential landlord in New Jersey, and your municipality has a landlord registration, plan, you go to evict them, the landlord registration is required through the landlord tenant court. And so this is dovetails with state law and really helps compliance, particularly with rental properties where evictions may be an issue. Other than that, it essentially, summer shares are still outlawed in Bradley Beach. We kept that provision from the old summer rental ordinance. We essentially expanded the summer rental and everything that's applying now to be a full year so that we know where all the landlords are in the town. And I don't want to speak too much for Mr. Murphy because he has his own job here as a code enforcer, but a lot of our committee meetings revolved around Mr. Murphy's ability to get his hands around where these rentals are and making sure that they're complying with all the rules and frankly, not disrupting the permanent residents' quality of life in the neighborhoods. That's the ultimate goal of this. Mr. Murphy wants to start here on landlord registration, get the database going. I'll let perhaps the council people talk about some of the ideas they had to expand on this in the next policy going forward in terms of actually going out and finding a search for on online websites for short-term rentals that may not be picking and compare against the registration. That was one of the ideas mentioned. I don't want to take too many other people's thunder who did more than just write it like me. But in any event, this establishes a landlord registration in town that will help the town get a handle on rental properties in the town through something that's through a process that is not as onerous as the CO inspections that may cross different departments and things. So it's very much an organizational tool for Mr. Murphy's office in the first instance to increase enforcement. And then number two, as this goes forward, I think there's plans to expand upon that even further to address any continuing issues that this net doesn't catch, kind of make the screen look smaller. So I believe that's everything. I'll turn it back over to the mayor and to the committee to talk. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I don't, do you have any additional comments?
Council members.
Yeah.
Okay, so number one, this has been a long time coming. A lot of our residents have been asking probably for a couple of years off and on, and certainly I think things heated up 6 or so months ago. There's been a lot of legwork put into this draft of the short-term rental ordinance, and I think for the most part, it's a really good start because as Mr. Cannon mentioned, we do have a minimum stay requirement, which I think is critical. There are a couple of things that I personally would like to see, and I don't think these are particularly difficult to track, that I would like to see added to the registration process. And there's a lot already captured, the names of the tenants, the insurance that the landlord maintains on the building and so forth. But I'd just like to mention for the council's benefit and for our residents' benefit, I would also like to see us track maximum occupancy. There are times where, it's not often, but there are times where you get the kind of frat house mentality where people pile into a unit, 1 or 2 units that are much smaller than the occupants. And I know there's a plan to collect the floor plan information from which we can determine maximum occupancy. There's been a little back and forth. I think Mr. Murphy is in favor of having a process, but he also does acknowledge that there are some challenges with tracking maximum occupancy as part of the registration. So I don't know what the solution is. Mr. Barenbach, I'm looking at you because you've been in some of these conversations. I don't know what the solution is, but I can't imagine it's particularly difficult. If we have a floor plan and if we know what rooms are kitchens and bathrooms and bedrooms, then we could establish 6 or 8 as part of the registration. And once that occurs, I would think more or less that number would not change year to year, unless of course there was a renovation to the building. So, I don't know if you'd like to respond to that.
I think during the committee discussion we had on this, that there were a couple of factors. One was that it requires the identification by name of the occupants of the building. So at the time that the application is made for the rental, one knows the number and one knows the names. In the event there is then something that goes wrong at the property and there is there are parties present living in the unit that are not part of it, it then becomes the subject of the issuance of either a violation notice or a subsequent summons in accordance with the general municipal regulations. The floor plan provides certain limits, but we're also operating under a state housing code, and the state housing code provides what I consider to be rather broad limits on the square footage requirements. And I'm not aware that the municipality has an ability to be able to exceed those state standards. It struck me following the discussion that we had that I thought at least initially Mr. Murphy believed that he had sufficient information and sufficient data to be able to deal with the concern that only 12 or 13 people are supposed to be in the building, but it ends up having 25. Something that's excessive, he would be able to deal with. What I heard basically was that it may be a little more difficult if you're dealing with the fact that there are 12 named and now there's a 13th. So excessive violations, I believe, can be controlled under the existing plan that we have prepared, and it seems to me that that probably ought to be tested and determined as to whether or not it is adequate or not, and then we possibly go the route of finding an ability under the law to be able to make something more restrictive.
Again, my personal bias is to try to be as proactive as we can. As you described the potential solution, I think you're describing Mr. Murphy's position. It's waiting until it's tested, waiting until the police have to knock on the doors. And I'd rather everyone understands right up front, maximum occupancy is 8. You submit 10 names. There's a box here that says you've got 8, you've got too many names on your list. The police don't have to knock on the door. So again, in the interest of time, I would like us to track as part of the process, registration process, maximum occupancy. I'd like to understand off-street parking. If a rental unit provides some off-street parking, obviously that's a very good thing. Similarly, if it doesn't provide any off-street parking, so you have to park on the street, you have 5 renters and they each bring their own car, you got 5 different cars now parking next door to you if you're a resident. I'd like to at least be able to track, not necessarily take immediate action on this, but off-street parking available and vehicle registrations. There are many times where these new cars come into town, they're visiting for a week or whatever, they block a driveway, they park in an inappropriate area. And I think it would be helpful if we, as part of the weekly registration, if we could track vehicle registration.
Can I go quick? I'm sorry, I didn't
Please.
interrupt you. So I know, I was there, I see.
Yeah.
So I thought, and obviously this issue's come up before in the town, and so I thought about how to kind of mesh those two things without making it too onerous. And we do have, as you recall, chapter 328, which we adopted back in 2020. And I'm not sure you were aware of this.
No.
So we have a chapter about overcrowding of dwellings.
Mhm.
So I thought in the ordinance, after we hung up that day, I thought that if you, number 5 was which floor plan shall comply with chapter 328, then you basically have it at the outset, and the standards are already. I'm not sure Mr. Murphy knows about this. He's relatively new.
He
A while
does.
ago. Oh, he does. He talked about it. Okay. So I mean, it's a quick check, pretty much, of the floor plan with chapter 328. That's how I was thinking you can mesh those two without having to go inspect people's houses on a weekly basis or what have you. That's how I was thinking it was a good compromise between what everyone was talking about at that committee. That's acceptable to you, and we'll call Mr. Murphy and ask him as well.
Yeah, I mean, the houses are gonna change week to week, so you inspect it once or twice a year, and at some point you confirm that, the landlord has identified the appropriate maximum occupancy, I would think.
No, I mean, it can just be, it can even be noted if there is a cross-check, then you, like, for example, if you have an application where they put 2 names on it in a single-family house, you know, I'm not sure there's gonna be a really scrutinized check, as to whether we have a triage list like any other, you know, employee. But if someone has 10, and it's making specific reference to chapter 328, number one, someone's probably not even gonna give you 10 people in a 2-bedroom house, because they already saw it in the ordinance. So it might just cut down it that way in the first instance, because it shows that we're aware of the issue. And then number 2, it gives Mr. Murphy the flexibility to do it on applications that might warrant it, but not on something which is a couple renting a whole house for the weekend.
That may be all that's needed, is to bring that citation into the new ordinance language. What I like about this, I say this for the public's benefit, most folks, I believe, haven't seen this yet. This provides the ability to revoke the rental license if there are violations, which I think is a good thing. And there would be a regular change would there be with changes in occupancy, you know, every week, let's say short-term rental, new people come in, there would be a fee assigned with every change of occupancy, which I think is a good thing. I think it just make sure we manage the process effectively. What we haven't done, and it's not necessarily a part of this ordinance, but what I think we really need to do as a borough is find ways to operationalize this efficiently. And for example, 2 things, I'd like to see if we can explore some sort of online capability to provide these updates. Mr. Murphy described, if you're renting a place out for 10 weeks, you bring in 10 pieces of paper with the list of names of the occupants. And I think in this day and age, most of these short-term rental companies are probably doing things electronically. They probably have all that information online, and to transcribe that into our paper form seems potentially silly. I mean, I don't know how it works, but I gotta believe in this day and age there's technology that could support the process. The other piece of this that I've just been on this crusade for a couple of years now is I do think we need some external monitoring of rental properties. And by that I mean, from a pure compliance standpoint, if someone doesn't report that they are renting, and let's say short-term rentals in particular, if they don't report that to us, we find out in time because a neighbor complains or somebody complains. I would much rather have a proactive process, and there are organizations out there that do this. One is, that I'm familiar with, they may not be the best, is Host Compliance. They track marketing activities. So they go to all these 50 different sites for sale, you know, the different, what, Airbnb, VRBO, and they track who's advertising rentals. They give us a list. In Bradley Beach, these 62 homes are advertising. We match that against our new registration. And when we have 45 registered and they give us 62, 17 difference, we can go knock on the door. It's a proactive way of managing this. And I'd like to see the borough evaluate Host Compliance and any of their competitors to see if we can have an external monitoring mechanism. That would be much better than putting that burden on our residents. And that's it for my comments.
I have no comments. You covered a lot there. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, Greg. When we first started talking about revising the short-term rental ordinance, I was really concerned with if we could make it a requirement that it's owner occupied. Because the problem that I see is like somebody just buys a house in Bradley Beach because they know they can make money doing Airbnb, and then our friends and neighbors out there end up living next to an LLC. They don't have neighbors, and it's just bad for the community, and it's driving up prices and whatever. So I understand we got off the idea of requiring owner occupancy to do short-term rentals. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I mean, obviously this is a hot area of regulation. Owner occupied has never been tested by the courts. So a 7-day
we can't do that, but, I mean, are you saying, sure?
The answer is I don't know if you can do the owner occupied or not. It seems very restrictive for a beach town and a resort
So
community.
you're saying we might get sued and it's not been tested, so we don't want to test it?
I'm not sure you want to be the test case.
Okay. So how do these changes solve the problem of across the street from the school, there are basically some low rent rentals, and somebody bought them all up and fixes them all up and turn them into Airbnbs, and they kicked everybody out, the school lost 7 kids, because of that. How does this prevent something like that from happening?
No, it doesn't necessarily, as a policy matter.
Okay.
There's also nothing stopping 7 people that live in Bergen County from buying this house and not going to school here either. So I think that's a very difficult policy issue.
I understand. So my hope with this was to get at that, like to make it, in a way, kind of burdensome or onerous to do short-term rentals, therefore get people that are landlords doing long-term, year-round rentals, and we have a more stable community, and we have people that don't get kicked out and get, because again, if this happens to a couple more apartments, we don't have a school anymore. I've already spoken about that. So it just sounds to me
But
like.
issues being faced by Neptune City as well.
Well,
That's not uncommon in the area.
I understand, right, but it's our deal to solve
I
that. So-
think that, that's a community concern, as you can see in the old summer rental, ordinance that is being taken out there. It talks about the school year and school children and the permitted length of rentals. I'm not sure that would hold up under today's case law. I think what Al was alluding to is that the committee had a long conversation about all those issues, basically from soup to nuts. But in order to get a handle on even what the data is to figure out what is warranted, like if you found out that 10 or 15% of the houses in the town were doing this, you might want to risk taking some sort of owner-occupied ban. But I think in order to make that decision as to risk or pushing the envelope on those kind of policies, you really have to know how many are doing it to begin with. And I think at this moment in history, Paul can only give you an best guess. So, I mean, Paul, again, I don't want to speak for Mr. Rudy's step here, it's either to me, but what I took away from his presentation to the committee was that I hear you on all those issues, but I need to get my hands around how many people are here, the baseline data for it. So I'm not saying no and concluding that conversation with you. I just think that until you get them all on a list and figure out what's going on in what neighborhood, it's hard to address.
You make a good case for registration. One last thing, you said the minimum 6.5 days. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why you wouldn't just say 7 nights. I understand there has to be a time. Nobody rents for truly 7 days. It's like 4 hours short of that or whatever. People got to get out and cleaning crews have to come in or whatever. But you don't rent a hotel room or an Airbnb or VRBO or whatever for a day. You rent it for the night. So why don't we just say 7 nights?
So 7 nights, you stay in a hotel by the night, and we do not have the authority to regulate hotels.
So we can't even use that word?
I just, I thought it was safer. Look, the case law says 7 days is okay, a week is okay. So I just put it, I had this discussion with the committee, they said the exact same thing. Why can't we say 6 days, 7 nights? It's because I think it's easier for Paul to enforce if it's just a deadline versus, nights, days, that sort of thing. 156 hours is inarguable. That's what I've seen.
I just want to add one more thing too. We did a lot of research and we compared very similar towns to what we are like, and this is how we came up with these ideas. And I want to thank everybody for their hard work. Paul Murphy, Frank Cannon, Frank Firebug, Councilman Gubitosi. I think it's come a long way, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Weber, just a couple of thoughts that came to me as you said it. We talked about that owner-occupied requirement. We also talked about at one point having more of a hotel taxi process.
Can't do that.
Well, some Airbnbs do that. You can recover 8%, I believe, in New Jersey. But anyway, where we includes up to, no more than 2 inspections a year, unless there's some obvious violation. Whereas right now, as our ordinances read, with every change of occupancy, you're supposed to have a new inspection, which we don't do and people don't report on them anyway. But, Mr. Weber, we also did say that we would retain the CO fee, the $125 fee, on a weekly basis. So, if someone's renting weekly, changing occupancy weekly, so it might be, you know, that's a burden on that business. Again, I'm sure a lot of people can, you know, do well financially, but at least it's trying to put some parameters around managing the business.
Okay, got time to take a couple of questions. Yes, yes.
Hi, Dr. Tom McGuire, 610 Brittany Avenue. I just had a few questions about, first we were talking a lot about enforcement, about Mr., what's his name? Mr. Murphy. What does that mean? It's not like the police. You can't go there and just say, hey, how many people do you have in there? Can you do that legally? Like, what's really enforcement? Is enforcement really just reactive complaint, or does he actually have any ability to do anything?
So if someone, let's say someone reports to him that there's a short-term rental going on in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And he goes over there and they don't have a landlord registration certificate, that's a violation of the ordinance.
Okay.
And so, the idea is that, and, you know, I live in a neighborhood too. I
Yeah.
can tell you, where everyone goes to church in my neighborhood, or
Yeah.
temple in the neighborhood, let alone, you know, I think that his idea is, people are gonna tell me where they are, and then if you give me the ability to make them register outside the summer season all year long,
Yeah.
then I'll eventually be able to gather them all through, you know, people that are complying and the people who aren't, and I'm gonna find them.
Okay, and I heard it mention also the landlord registration fee, and I heard a fee also about that too. So a landlord registration fee, does that mean it's for the summer, or is that every single week? There's a landlord
Annually.
registration? Annually? But I heard someone say something about the tenants having to be listed on there.
So you have to file a new registration statement anytime there's a change of occupancy, but you don't have to pay $100 every single time.
So
But you do have to pay the CO fee every single time this comes through to us.
Okay, so there's a CO fee every single time, the landlord registration fee has to be once, but every time there's a turnover, so weekly, you have to give a list of those people that are gonna be there?
Every time you're gonna change it over.
Okay, and who's responsible for, say someone forgets or a last minute change? I mean, I've had Airbnbs, I stayed at Airbnbs, and things change. Like, and I plan things on a Thursday and leave Friday. So is that my responsibility to get that landlord registration fee on that Thursday night?
It's on the owner.
It's on the owner.
The owner, yes.
Okay,
So
but
when
again,
you
that's
get
in-
your Airbnb details for Bradley Beach,
Yeah.
it's gonna say whoever names you, whatever names you give, you know,
And
just
will
like
I
you get
get-
every, you know.
Will it be an online form at least that we can, that we'll be able to use?
I
Because,
believe that's Mr. Murphy's goal, to use the pilot to be able to do it that way.
okay, because that, I mean, it just sounds impossible for me. Like, what if I'm not around? What if I'm away? To give the form over to someone, so I'm just trying to.
I think
close
closest,
it.
I mean, it's definitely taking me an email, I'm a little positive that.
Mr. Cannon, he discussed that, Mr. Murphy, and he is still of the mind that we would get paper forms that he would then load on the pilot. But I don't have to find an electronic way to submit.
Okay. Yeah, I think before we enforce it, I really think that should be definite. Like, we are an age that I can just sign up for something, you know, so we should be able to do that. And the other thing is, I know you said 6.5 days, right? So I'm just thinking out loud, Thursday to Friday, right? Is that what that is? That's 6.5 days?
Saturday to Saturday.
Saturday to Saturday?
Well, it could be any combination.
Yeah, but.
Okay, I'm just trying to think, 'cause like,
The same day.
me, like, having a rental, if I had a rental on it, could you, in theory, still have someone every Friday in there?
Yes.
Correct? Every Friday, right?
That's why I want to go by nights, because it's.
No, no,
easier.
that's not my point. My point more is about, I know it's a 7-day minimum, but what if you have no input on Airbnb? What if that person only paid for 4 days? But they kept it vacant the other 3 days. Because I just stayed in Airbnb in Florida, it's a 7-day minimum, and, which is gorgeous, by the way, John. This town changed none of the landscape, it is not owner occupied. It was one of the most beautiful towns I've ever been to. It's stunning, so well kept, so it doesn't always change for the negative. I felt very at home there, just so you know. And for residents, it was amazing. So, and almost every house had a rental sign in front of it. So it was a majority of the Airbnbs that were there. And I know they had a 7-day, but we only stayed 6. So we did not, even though, but we did pay for it. But I was just wondering, you can't enforce that, correct?
We cannot make you stay at the beach for the full 7 days.
No. Meaning you can't make that Airbnb charge for those 7 days. So if I paid for Friday to Sunday Airbnb, but my next booking is now next Friday.
I would think that.
So they just
the
could
idea
say
is
as their
that-
listing is weekly rent, weekend rentals.
No, I mean, we couldn't make them charge it, but in theory, they're losing money if they're doing that, if it's fully booked.
Yeah, they can't fill it in.
We're kind of the private market to take care of that.
Yeah, I know. I'm very against the 7 days. I'm for like 4 days, 7 days. I think it's excessive, but that's just me. Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask a question before the next speaker? I feel like I've heard two different things. I thought I heard somebody say there was no change to the CO process. I thought Al just said that, what did you just say?
Up to 2 inspections a year.
2 inspections a year, so that is a change, because right now they're inspected between every rental, so which one is it?
But as a practical matter, they don't have the manpower to staff.
Practice not gonna do that. If then we don't do it.
So on the books, it says, yes, that's theoretically should be happening, and there's also a whole summer rental ordinance that theoretically should be happening, but in essence, neither is.
But don't we collect a fee for the CO, like a new CO?
I believe we do.
Yes.
Okay, but we're not providing a service of an inspection.
My understanding of, if you haven't plugged through, yeah, they
So
don't do it.
two a year, even if you're renting out like every single week of the year?
We just wanna make sure the heat is on in October. That's why they do the second one in the
Okay.
fall.
Remember that, well, that twice a year is only non-life safety hazard places. So that's not any apartments or condos, that's gonna be inspected.
So
all the time.
it's not right to say there's no change to the CO process.
If I can just interject, Mr. Murphy also indicated that if there are any unusual circumstances that are taking place during that period, there will be additional inspections. The minimum number of inspections are 2 per year, but there can be and are currently more than 2 taking place per year when circumstances require that.
And Greg, this is only for seasonal, 2 inspections a year. If you
Yes.
have an annual renter, there's
Correct.
just one when the person, a new
When there's a
person moves
change
in.
of occupancy.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jamie Hausman, 100 Ford Avenue. I think that I understand why we want to have this ordinance, but I think we need to find a balance between the restrictions that we want in the ordinances and to also think about the revenue that these short-term rentals do bring into the town. For every rental that comes in, we have people visiting our restaurants, we have people paying for beach badges going to the beach, so I think we need to find a balance to do that in order to not cancel that out completely. And I know you had mentioned, Gregory, that we want to find out how many people or how many rentals are happening, and the point of that is to get on the list, but I would have to say, don't the CCOs now, currently in the process, give us that list of how many rentals the town is having? So I'd like to say, if the idea is that we want these landlords to have the registrations, I would assume that the people that aren't filling out the CCOs now are gonna be the same people that aren't filling out the registrations. So it's gonna be the same people that are not doing that, but I would assume that for the CCOs we have, we'd be able to get a baseline list of how many rentals the town has over the summer and compare that to the revenue that we think that we would lose by making these restrictions of these ordinances so strict that it eliminates rentals completely. I think you mentioned that the registration would be $100. Okay.
Great, I'm sorry, wasn't it $50 in a sliding scale?
No, it was $100 for the year for 4 or less units, and for 5 or more units, it was $20 per unit.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think also, you mentioned the parking and that we should have to get vehicle registration or something like that. I think that that's a violation of privacy. I mean, there's people that don't do rentals and park terribly in town. So I think that parking laws in general should just be applied to everybody in the town love the idea of the online CCOs, and being able to, the online CCOs, and also to have, if you wanted an external company to track that for the people that aren't filling out the CCOs. And I mentioned this before the last time we were talking about short-term rentals, but we are paying $125 for each CCO. And across the board, if I have 10 rentals, the amount of money that we're looking at, where supposedly 50 of each of those CCOs is going to a tourism fee, why can't that money be used towards making this to be available online, or to have that external company that you're talking about to do that? Because I think the majority of the people are following these forms and filling them out. I think also the types of sort of checking up that you want to do. Right now, to book the schedule to have the inspection even happen is like 6 to 8 weeks out. So if we can't get someone to come and do the inspections, how are we going to expect someone to go around and check up on who's there? Where is that coming into play? We have one person, it's 8 weeks to schedule that CCO, and before that, or to schedule that inspection, and before that inspection even happens, you have to fill out a form taking liability, saying that you agree that the smoke detectors work and all of that work in order to wait for that inspection. So I would say the inspection dates are Tuesdays, and there's like a 2-hour window across the board. And I think we do have a lot of information based on the CCOs that are filled out of how many people are renting in the town. And I think we should actually be using that data to apply it to some of these things in the ordinances. We're trying to fix something and put restrictions on place, but I don't think we're using the data that we currently have to even make these, make these assessments and figure out what actually is happening in the town. Just checking my notes. Would there be any restrictions on the type of landlords that would be able to fill out the registration? Like, could it be LLCs?
Yes.
So there's no.
But you need a local representative.
Okay, so you just need someone local in order to be contacted, but it could be an LLC.
Yes, could be an
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Brigitte McGuire, 610 Brindley. I want to say that enforcement is our biggest issue, and I think that's what even brought us to all of this. So I do hate tightening the belt first before we get enforcement as our #1 priority here. However, I am in favor of the 6.5 days as opposed to my husband because I'm the one who cleans them when I have a rental. So the shorter stays are more turnover for me. But I think enforcement's gonna be our biggest problem. I like the idea of the software. I've, visited that conversation in the past because our tourism fees, our tourism revenues are this money. So I have a question with all these extra registration fees coming out of this. Is that all tourism as well?
No.
And there's not a lot, there's not a tremendous amount.
So only the 2 times a year COs or the 1 time a year CO is tourism money?
CO will be the same, in shape occupancy, and that's still the same as tourism.
Okay, so like
This
the
is really not,
registration
this doesn't really
fees?
have anything to do with the money.
Right, so the registration fees don't fall under it, like, they don't go to tourism?
No, they're gonna
like
be
the CO.
miscellaneous revenue.
Okay, okay, so, with
Probably
that,
gonna pay for the software, to be honest with you.
what'd you say?
They're probably gonna pay for the software. It's not, it's
Okay.
$100 per year per unit. So it's
Okay.
not gonna generate that much money.
Which makes a great point. Because our tourism fees are paying for a lot of events in this town with, not generating so much money, and enforcement, that's why I'm stuck on enforcement. Because if we're using so many tourism dollars for all these events in town, enforcement has to be top priority here. I'd also like to say that with me stressing enforcement, and I'm hoping that becomes a big priority, that we start publicly documenting that revenue and that spend for what's coming in and what's going out. So just wanted to add that here. Thanks.
Thanks. We got time for one or two more, yes?
Yancey Meadow, Ocean Park condominiums. I don't know, we're right on line together tonight. Here it is. I brought up also the issue as to the owner of the property in previous discussions. And I think, and again, I understand these are, first attempts, see what works, see what sticks, what doesn't. But I think a very good step towards responsible, short-term renter owners is that the property should be owned by a person. So it can't be 7 people from Bergen County who choose to form a corporation. It's a personal, private ownership. Now, you can't force that owner to stay there, but I think that brings a different element to the whole procedure, the whole process, the whole intent of it, to not be, Starbucks Corporation owning it, but a person. So I'd like to request that be visited. In addition, when you're listing on the CO, I understand putting names of adults. I don't really think it's appropriate to put names of minors. I could understand 2 male minors, something like that, but I think it's very important to respect the right of privacy, which we know this town has a recurring problem of. The whole enforcement thing is mind-boggling, I'm sure. And again, it's pitting neighbor against neighbor. And I'm kind of curious, if I go to the beach and I come home Saturday afternoon at 4:30 to take my nap, which is a realm of possibility, and I pull up and, there's, car in the garage, car in the driveway, parked on the yellow strips, how am I reaching anyone? Like, I don't imagine this man, whoever he is working 24/7. The portal, where we used to be able to request, I called it a look-see, that's gone, thanks to our previous administrator. So I don't understand that logistics, because these people could be partying the whole weekend, especially if it's July 4th or Memorial Day, usually by Labor Day, they're at college. And Mr. Cannon, I know I'm not supposed to ask questions, even though they said ask questions. Could you explain to me the difference between, like, for example, the Airbnb for 6.5, 7 days, whatever, to a share rental? You said we've outlawed share rentals. To me, people want to rent an Airbnb for a month. Isn't that the same as a share rental?
In the traditional sense, no. Some are, no. Because you're renting so 3 to.
Could you just explain it? I'm sure you're.
Yeah, long story short, the tenant, even if it's a week-long tenant, and the people who send the registration statement, they're the people. You can't sell a share, like I'm gonna stay here 3 days, you're gonna stay here 3 days. So if someone gets a registration statement for the first 3 days, so-and-so's gonna be here, the next 3 days, so-and-so's gonna be here. You're not allowed to do that.
Oh, that's
just like you wouldn't be able to rent the house and then I sell 10 shares. They'll
Okay,
70s,
you're
80s
using
later,
shares
renting a beach
literally
house.
like, okay, I thought you meant like,
No, some are shares.
like 5 people splitting the cost of the month.
Oh, no, you can do
I'm
that.
thinking the Hampton share. I know we're just Bradley Beach and not the Hamptons, but I'm thinking like.
No,
right
this was already in the code to outlaw the traditional summer shares.
Which is the game, okay. I appreciate your clarification very much.
Ms. Meadow, I think the answer to your previous question would be the police, as in,
Oh, yes.
if it's on the weekend and you have a complaint, obviously code enforcement officer's not working on the weekend, you would call the police, and I'm sorry if that.
Mr. Weber and Ms. Meadow will never call the police. We've established that.
Just let me know when.
All right, we have time for one more question. Yes.
This landlord registration is a wonderful idea because the insurance requirement is part of it. And so I thank you for doing that. The occupancy occupancy is a huge issue. And the reason it's a huge issue is because we have the ordinance, the number of bedrooms corresponds with a square footage for common area. And I went through this with my daughters with share houses at Rutgers. Because it's a 4-bedroom house, where they convert the living room to a bedroom, they convert the dining room to a bedroom, and the only common area is the kitchen and the breakfast nook with a kitchen. Does not meet the requirements, and for that reason, the code officers in New Brunswick do not like it, because I pointed out numerous times. Okay, so it's a problem we're gonna have here, because you're trying to maximize occupancy in the units. So each unit should be certified. I have the same problem with my building, where I say to Mr. Murphy, how many is the CO? Well, I didn't really measure it. Well, I measured it, but I'm not the standard. And many realtors have that same issue. Each unit should be certified per the occupancy. Be less, that's fine, but the maximum occupancy should be a certain number. Now, Mr. Cannon, I did have one question about, is this $100 landlord registration per unit or per property?
So it's, excuse me, it's $100 for 1 to 4 units, okay, parcel, and then it's $20 per unit for 5 or more.
Right. I just wanted to
They're in line with each other.
confirm that. That's wonderful. And you know, the 328 ordinance that Mr. Cannon refers to, there was a lot of give and take in that, but you know, basically it upholds the state standards, and it's a safety issue. Let's not forget we had the Brindley Inn fire. We don't want places to be occupied. We've been in the papers for bad press. So I think my question also, Mr. Cannon, is that I have many clients who rent their house out, which is their principal residence, for 2 weeks because it's a non-taxable event under the IRS codes for 2 weeks. Now, would they be obligated to register as a landlord?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to clarify that. And I'm really hoping that this weekly, I mean, I heard a lot of people come in here, or I have an Airbnb next to me, you feel really bad for them. But what I'm hoping is the hard work that you've done and this weekly standard will create stability in the market. And I think it'll create stability for the Airbnb owners and regular homeowners who just happen to rent their property, but also for the residents. It is a residential neighborhood. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay.
There's one more person.
Yes, we'll take one more, but it really, over time, we're trying to stick to some reasonable times.
Shauna Bigler, 414 Monmouth Avenue. So it was my interpretation, and perhaps you can correct me, that the 6.5 days actually referred to the turnover. So it couldn't be less than a 6.5 day or a 7-day turnover, because these rentals are taking place throughout the year, not only during the season. So is it behooving the renter to require a 6.5 day rental? Or is it basically suggesting that the turnover cannot be less than 6.5 days? So if somebody wants to rent for just a weekend for 2 nights, they can do it, but the place cannot be rented out, you know.
That's an effective way to say it.
Right, because I think that clarifies it a little bit more, so it's not that the renters are required to rent for a 6.5 day period. Because there are some Airbnb rentals that that have a minimum number of days that you can rent, whether in season or off, whether it's their choice or whether it's, the municipality that the Airbnb is in.
The idea is that the real quality of there's a balance, as a number of speakers have said. And the real quality of life issues that we experience in other municipalities with short-term rentals are the weekend party houses where you rent the house for 2 days. So if you have, if you're, the ordinance is designed that if you're a short-term rent landlord and there's a party one weekend and the code enforcer or the police go back the next weekend, it's all different people, and within that 6.5 days, you have a lot of problems under this ordinance. And that's what it's really designed to catch, not the people who are renting their residence for extra money when they go to Florida or vacation or what have you. That's the reason for that duration, and that quality of life issue or community detriment, that's been supported by the court as a measure within the municipality's power to try to stop.
So it's not requiring, though, that there be 6.5 or greater
So
days
if
rental.
you rented it for 3 days and the landlord came in here and on the registration statement and put 6.5 days or 7 days
borough has office hours, you know, there's just no reason to do this on paper and submit it. All this stuff has to be done electronically. I think that has to be a priority to put that in place. And then also, in terms of registering vehicles, I would highly recommend that, because I think that is one of the concerns for the residents, particularly in season, when we have such parking issues, street parking issues. You know, we make requirements when there are back houses, when there are, you know, accessory houses, that there be parking accommodated for that. So I think we have to kind of think about that. I don't believe that it's an infringement of privacy to require that the borough has this information. And I might also suggest, and I've made the suggestion for use of the DPW dump site, that Bradley Beach put in place for residents, stickers that you put on your car. So you have a resident sticker on your car, so you can see, you know, and I don't know whatever number maximum allowed, whether it's 2 or more, depending on the size of the house, but other towns do this, and if you have a resident sticker, it enables you to go into whatever resident facilities there might be without having some person at the gate to check your identity, to look at your driver's license or whatever. It just shows you're a resident. It can stop people from dumping their stuff at the dump if the guy doesn't check, and it can also tell us if people on the street are residents or not. It's not going to tell us who they are, but certainly in areas where there's less street parking in Bradley Beach during the summer, you know, if there are 5 cars that come to an Airbnb rental, you know, that really infringes on the permanent residents. So, you know, these are things that I think we should really think about. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to the next agenda item, which is presentation of bids. There are none. Number 8 on the agenda is approval of minutes for June 28th council business meeting minutes. I'll make a motion to approve the June 28th council business meeting minutes.
Second. Mr. Marco, absent. Mr. Noble?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Oh, you must have really liked those minutes.
Okay. Agenda item number 9, public comments pertaining to the 7/12/23 agenda item, 5-minute limit, single instance. Any questions on the agenda? Yes.
I see the agenda today, Dr. Tom McGuire, 610 Brindley Avenue. I wanted to know what was what did it say? It said, there, request for proposals for 319 Lorraine. What does that actually mean?
We're just going to cover it up. We're just going to go on through it.
So are you requesting proposals, or are you just updating?
We're going to update people in a few minutes on that. We're going to frame it.
Okay. The other thing that I thought was going to be on the agenda was the, what is it, the food truck. Why isn't that on the agenda? The food truck that's empty on the North Beach, have we not had an I thought we had a recent application. Wasn't there an application in the last meeting or the meeting before?
No, it wasn't an application.
We've had no bids for that?
Somebody was interested in it, that's for sure.
But, yeah, but it did not work out.
At the conclusion of Dr. McGuire's comments, I will provide an update if that's what you would like.
Okay.
Yeah, please, because I've heard complaints that it's empty, and I think it's going to be empty. We're halfway through the summer, and it's going to be empty, and we're losing revenue. Do we get money from that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes, and I mean, money's an issue right now, obviously with our budget, so I would think this would be a very, very high interest of our town. Yeah.
I believe that when he goes to the beach fund.
It's in the beach fund.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
But we like money in the beach.
We like money,
Money is-
beach
money
fund
is
good,
good.
money is good, but, yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Can we hear you good?
You ready for me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Rick Bartolome, 116 Newark.
I'm sorry, just hold on 1 second. Just hold on. Go ahead.
This is regarding Dr. McGuire's question. The borough went out on 2 occasions for bids for the placement of a food vehicle at North Avenue. Neither time that we went out did we receive a bid. We then had the opportunity to be able to negotiate with interested parties. We had one proposal come in from one party that did not conform with the requirements of the local lands and buildings law and the local public contracts law, and so that one could not be considered. We had a second party come in and indicate that he had a number of people that he knew in the business that would be able to operate there, and that he would get back to me. He never got back to me. Even after I made 2 telephone calls to him to follow up.
As did I.
The third person got a hold of me, I'm going to say now, probably 3.5 weeks ago, with sufficient time to be able to negotiate something prior to July 4th. He indicated a significant interest, indicated, however, that he was essentially completely booked up with his facilities, and that he was going to reach out to some colleagues that he thought had some availability, and he would get back to me. He gave me an update approximately, I'm going to say 5 days before the 4th of July, so somewhere around the 30th of June. And in there, he indicated that he had reached out to these colleagues, that they were all booked up, that they had other things going, and that he couldn't do anything to assist the borough. And that was the last contact I had with anyone regarding that location. The last point is that, according to the Superintendent of Public Works, the cost of maintaining the trailers that the municipality owned, and at that point are about 10 to 12 years old, was exceeding the cost of whatever the municipality was taking in terms of rent. And so under those circumstances, the probability is that as the result of reduced costs this year, it's indeed possible, given the estimate provided by the Public Works Superintendent, that the municipality actually will be on the positive side in terms of saving more money than it has to expend to support the facility that would have been leased out.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Carey.
Rick Bartolome, 116 Newark. I know this is the next item on the agenda. I'm just curious as how the McCabe Avenue, the fixing of the pipe there went from $1 million, now going to $1.5 million. It just seems like a rather large increase, so I'm sure you'll explain that maybe with the ordinance. That's all some explanation of why it's going up 50%.
That's all. Well, yeah, it's not going up 50%, but we'll cover it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
Lord? Nancy Meadow, Ocean Park condominiums. So tying into what the gentleman said about McCabe Avenue price, once again, I agreed to before that it would be helpful to the public to know what insurance, what county, what state, federal even funds we are applying and waiting for, or didn't even apply because we couldn't be bothered, or did it wrong, because that certainly could offset these costs. And I just so envision a political cartoon of construction people coming up to McCabe Avenue, parking, getting out there, and going, where's the pipe? I thought we settled this. To the best of my knowledge, and I would certify even, there is no outflow pipe there on McCabe Avenue. So we either have stupidity, laziness, I don't know what it is, but I thought we had put that to rest. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no questions on the board. So we will go to the next agenda item, which, excuse me, is the bond ordinance 2023-10. I'll read it and then we can have a brief discussion about it. Bond ordinance amending the Park Bond Ordinance 2023-02 adopted on February 8, 2023, providing for McCabe Avenue stormwater outfall in order to increase the appropriation thereof by $500 and total appropriation of $1.5 million to increase the authorized bonds and notes to be issued to finance a portion of the cost thereof by $500,000 for total debt authorization of $1.5 million and to increase the allocation of the appropriation to cost permitted under NJSIA 40A2-20 authorized in and by the Borough of Bradley Beach, County of Monmouth, New Jersey. I can start this, and Greg, if you want to chime in, certainly do. When we got into this back in September, October, we just made a fairly, we just made an estimate of $1 million on the bond. We went out for bids, and the bid that we awarded, the low bid to Ham Construction, came in at $1,316,000 or $18,000. In addition to that, we also approved $90,000 for administration of it through Colliers, the engineering firm, and then there were some other application fees and some other things. So we've been aware that the numbers, it was in excess of $1 million. This just really kind of closes this out and ties it up. The total council had approved, again, $1.3 million, and I think it was in the March meeting, early March 22nd. So it's I'm going to call it a catch-up. And Greg, I don't know if you have any comments, and then we can open up to the council.
I don't think, unless there are questions from the council, I think I laid out the chronology of what took place for all of them.
Okay. So any questions by the council?
My question is, why wouldn't we have done this then, when we awarded the bid for $1.3 million? Why wouldn't we have done this then? That's my own. I'm not questioning the need to do it. It's not like the guy jacked up the price. The price was the price, but we had bonded for $1 million and he came in $1.3 million, and then nobody thought that we, So I'm just curious why now, not then.
I guess I would say that I don't know the answer to that question. What I do know is that we were in a position of not being able to pay the contractor when the bill came in because there were not sufficient funds to be able to pay. It appears as if the prior administrator, just before she left, when she became aware of the bids that had come in, directed the finance officer to come up with the necessary action to provide the funds. That directive appears to have gotten lost. I did indeed see that, so I know that it took place. I just don't, I know the message was sent, I don't know that the message was received. But as I presented the chronology to all of you, this is the position we're in, where the council has officially authorized these expenditures, and therefore there is a contractual obligation on the part of the borough to make these payments, and this is the only way in which to be able to meet that contractual obligation.
Any other questions?
My question, Ms. Meadow stole my thunder, but why do we continue to call this McCabe?
Yeah.
Because this is the original bond ordinance. We are amending the bond ordinance because that is the proper way to be able to do this. And we can't go back in time to when it was referred to as McCabe Avenue, as it was for months, as I recall, when I was not even here with the borough. that is the reason it's still there. Otherwise, we would say Ocean Park / McCabe.
Thank you.
Okay, make a motion to approve 2023, 10. Second.
Second.
Mr. Marco, absent. Mr. Noble?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes. Introduction of ordinance 2023-11, an ordinance amending chapter 423 towing of the borough's revised general ordinance to update the rates and charges for towing vehicles within the borough. Make a motion to
Discussion. I don't doubt that our fees are low and they need to be raised. Get that. I think that's across the board with all the fees, but where did this come from? And then how come we, like, if somebody parks on Main Street and it's illegal and they get towed, like, why, what is the borough, like, why isn't that between the person that's getting towed and the towing company? I don't understand why.
If I can, first of all, Captain Arnold is here and will be able to answer some of the questions. Let me just give you this overall genesis of it. The current ordinance has been in place for a very long time. The rates that the municipality currently permits a towing company to charge when they are summoned by the police is a number that is lower than anywhere else, and is one that the towers are essentially not willing to provide the service. You or I can call an individual tow company to have our vehicle towed for a reason, and that is a contractual relationship between the individual and the tow company, and they come to an agreement on a price. This ordinance covers a condition whereby a police officer has to engage a tow company on behalf of a person whose car needs to be towed. They have a rotating list of tow companies so that there's no favoritism to any particular tow company, and the rates that are set by the municipality are set because it is not a contractual relationship between an individual and a tow company. It is a third party, the borough as represented by the police officer, arranging for the tow to take place. So that's the difference between your example and what this covers. And I will move out of my seat and allow Captain Arnold to be here to answer any other questions you have.
Did you get it right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's very good. That's fine.
I guess, my question is similar. By the way, I don't know how many folks in the audience are aware, but it looks to me like we're increasing a maximum towing rate of $35 as exists today to $115. So it's a fairly substantial update. I think warranted and necessary, but it's interesting that it is an old ordinance apparently. My question is, how sustainable are these numbers? For example, is this the going rate today? I mean, should we be talking about higher dollar amounts up to, instead of 115, should we say maximum 125, 135?
So I've been in conversation with the administrator. So each year annually, there's a towing association, and they'll put out, in conjunction with the state police, they'll put out a maximum tow fee. And for 2022, it was 150. We, like the administrator said, I believe it hasn't been changed since 1995. So we are the lowest around. And we used to have about 4 tow companies on our rotating list. For close to 10 years, all of them have said, we're not going to be able to do this much longer for your fees. At the end of last year, they were all gone. They didn't re-up their contract with us. So we were struggling. We got 2 to sign on, but they were of the understanding that we were probably going to increase the fees. So I'm glad we are. So I kind of did the area, did an analysis of the area. That 115 puts us a little bit above, maybe $5, $10 above some of the other towns in the area. That they also have not updated them in a few years as well. So I think the 115 will keep us, you know, strong for a few years to come, but I'm sure it'll have to be addressed again.
I mean, hopefully we won't go another 20+ years before looking at this again. But while we're doing this, I guess the obvious question is, Captain, if you think this is pretty much in line with the current, should we make it 135 instead of 150? Should we give our third parties a little more cushion?
You know, honestly, that's up to you. I have no issue going a little higher. It's essentially just satisfying the tow companies. We're not really, the town's not benefiting from it. It makes us more attractive, I guess, for tow companies, but I think, you know, what we provided, those numbers we provided, they're strong numbers. So if you don't want to revisit it in another 2 or 3 years, it could increase it a little bit.
Any other questions? Okay, so make a motion to approve 2023.
Second.
Mr. Marco, absent. Mr. Noble?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes. Okay, we'll move to public hearing and adoption of ordinance 2023-9, which is an ordinance amending Chapter 310, noise of the borough's revised general ordinances to update noise regulations and address current issues and usages within the borough, especially during the summer season. We'll start with any council comments. Are there any council comments? Okay.
Yeah, we kind of beat it to death at our last meeting, but just as a recap, we went through a lot of discussions. Started out just focused on construction, limiting it in Saturdays in the summer. Made wholesale changes to this ordinance, and as I said a couple of weeks ago, I think we ended up in a good spot. It may not be perfect, but we'll have opportunities to continue to revise it as we move forward.
Okay, then if there's no other comments, we'll make a motion to open the public comments on ordinance 2023-9. Ask limit comments to 3 minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Marco? Absent. Mr. Noble?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes. Any public comments? Yes.
Thomas J. Cohen, 612 Third Avenue. I'd like to thank the council for working so hard on this and finally get it done. Tried to do this a couple years ago, we're told, oh, no, you can't do it, you can't do it. But you mimicked some ordinances and took some things from some other towns which operate very properly. I just had one question. Does this noise ordinance apply to the borough itself?
There are a couple of very specific exclusions noted for pickup, yeah, garbage trucks.
Well, garbage is a separate ordinance. I mean, they
No,
can
but
pick up at 6 o'clock.
Right, but
Yes.
we have without looking at, there's a very specific clause in here that references pickup, I think it is, but it includes garbage in the broad description. And that would be for, residents in particular, but the borough is specifically excluded here, and as you said, 286 applies.
But I mean, the borough was mowing the park this morning from our house at 7:40. So is that okay for them to do that, but everyone else has to wait till 8?
Again, what was the example?
They were mowing the park this morning at 7:40. Does it apply to the borough to start their lawn mowing at 8 o'clock? That's my question.
Legally, no.
Really? So they can do it whenever they want?
Yes.
The borough can, okay, so they don't give the residents the same courtesy as the residents have to give each other?
Courtesy is different than legal.
Okay, yes, you're 100% correct. I totally understand, but I would appreciate the same courtesy. Thank you very much.
You're saying that like the town does not have to comply with our own?
email comment on this.
There's another one that-
I'm sorry, was there something?
Yeah,
Okay.
that with the email.
Okay. You want me to read the email or?
Yeah.
Okay. The email is from Tim Sexsmith of 500 Lorraine Avenue. Section 310-8 of the proposed revision to the noise ordinance states as follows. Sound devices on boardwalk, beaches, and streets. It shall be unlawful for anyone to operate, play, or permit the operation of any radio, phonograph, tape or cassette player, television, musical instrument, loudspeaker or amplifier, or any other machine or device for the electronic or stereophonic production or reproduction of sound on the boardwalk. Beaches and streets, unless the person operating said device is using earphones, which restrict the sound emanating from said device to the hearing of the operator only. Oops, sorry.
It's my time, you can use it.
I'm out of time. Given this section prohibits playing music on the boardwalk and beach, doesn't that imply that musical acts will no longer be legally able to perform on the promenade? This prohibition would also seem to extend to line dancing, Shakespeare performances, and even the Memorial Day parade and festivities. If banning musical acts is not the intent of the council, then this ordinance needs to be revised, again, prior to adoption.
You're
Right,
exempt.
and wouldn't that fall under the same thing?
Yeah, given what Greg just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's town property.
There's also specific, there's specific exemption as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good, thank you, yes.
Shauna Greenblatt, 414 Monmouth Avenue. When does this go into effect?
20 days from now, I think.
20 days following adoption and publication.
So what date would that be?
I believe it's August 1st. If I
August-
calculate, yeah, I
August
had
It was
calculated
within
it.
like 72 hours, depending on when the newspaper prints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason that I'm asking, first of all, I want to thank Councilman Gubitosi and Weber for working so hard on this. This is very important. I had sent an email to mayor and council making some recommendations about communication. And it wasn't acknowledged by the mayor, so I would like to ask, this is really not council business, but this is the administration, what steps are going to be taken to notify all constituents of this change? Because this is a big change for in-season Saturdays particularly.
Yeah, we need to put the communication together.
So what does that mean? I mean,
We will put the communication together.
okay, so I guess when I'm asking really for more specifics, so, will current active contractors be notified of this?
That'll be part of the communication, yes.
That will. Will residents be notified of this?
Communication, communicate.
Okay, because this is very important. And tree companies. Will tree companies, and how does that work? How do you reach out to tree companies so, I don't wake up on a Saturday at 10 in the morning and see that my next door neighbor is having a tree cut down, and then I have to respond to it?
Yeah, that'll be part of the communication process, yes.
Okay, so, you go through is the Shade Tree Commission going to be involved in this process?
I don't think the Shade Tree Commission would be. I think we have people that are registered in town to cut down trees down.
Okay, because I would make the recommendation that the permit, the shade tree permit, include that information. I think that's very important.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, we will then close the public comments, and I make a motion to close, and then make a motion to close and move to adopt 2023 at 9.
Second.
Mr. Marco, absent. Mr. Noble?
Yes.
Mr. Gubitosi?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, communications, this is just more of a quick briefing, request for proposals for 319 Lorraine. It's been off the agenda for a couple of meetings, and I put it on communications. I wanted to ask Mr. Fernback just to quickly update people as to where we are with the request for proposals.
The council indicated that they would prefer to receive proposals from engineering firms to prepare specifications for the demolition and clearing of 319 Lorraine Avenue. Those specifications, the RFP has been prepared and circulated to the 5 engineering firms identified earlier by the council. They have been given until either the 24th or the 25th of July to submit proposals. The 5 engineering firms, I believe, are CME, Remington Vernick, Avakian, T&M, and H2M Engineers and Architects. Once those proposals have been received, they will be analyzed and reviewed, and a recommendation will be made to the governing body in terms of an award of that contract.
That's a good question. Mr. Fairbank, the RFP, something I've mentioned a couple of times, but I don't know if we've done anything yet to address this. The RFP we're asking the engineers to complete, does it provide specific guidance in terms of the artifacts? Because if 98% of the focus is on the demolition, that's probably not going to be sufficient. I personally would like to see a fairly robust proposal as to what their process would be to help us with working with salvage companies to foster, the disposal of these artifacts.
That was included in the directive. I was trying to, with everything else today, get through to be able to review to make sure that that was there. I was able to confirm that the church versus the parsonage would be alternates, but the piece you're asking for I haven't been able to confirm, but it's on my to-do list.
Okay, so the RFP hasn't been released yet?
No, it has been released, and I didn't release it, but it was released. I received it early today, and I was trying to go through it. I haven't been able to get through it yet.
Okay, who did prepare the RFP?
The purchasing agent.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, let's move to resolutions. Consent and individual. First, the consent agenda. We have 3 things on the consent agenda: 2023-02 bill list, 2023-203 authorized proposed Williams Association to conduct their silent disco in July and August on Fifth Avenue Beach, and 2023-204 approval of an on-premise 50/50 raffle license to the Valley Beach Elementary School PTA and waiver of the $20 municipal application fee. Make the motion to
Just
approve the consent
a
agenda.
quick comment on this.
Yep.
I plan to vote for the consent agenda, but my question is.
Excuse me, could you please speak louder? It's very difficult for us to hear you back there. Thank you. Just move your microphone. Thank you.
Okay, my question is regarding the, in this case, it's the 50/50 raffle for the PTA. We're regularly asked to waive application fees, and $20, 50/50 raffle, $20 application. We're regularly asked to waive application fees, and, again, as we try to reassess our policies for better managing our assets, do we have a policy specifically? I'm a huge fan of the PTA. I absolutely plan to vote for this, but do we ever vote no? I mean, and if we don't vote no, do we need application fees? I mean, how does this happen?
Well, one question I have.
Well,
for Eric is,
there's definitely a state fee they have to pay, that we can't waive.
We're always asked to waive application fees. And I'm just wondering, do we ever vote no?
Not that often.
It's very rare.
It's very rare. Really, PTA is probably the only one that I do waive, and I ask them to provide me a letter every time. That's mainly for audit purposes. If the state ever came in here and we have something on the books saying that we would normally charge a $20 fee, I want the state to be able to see that, this organization did in fact write a letter and we did in fact waive it.
I just seem to.
A lot of towns do, checking, they do charge a municipal fee. And again, it's at their discretion, the council's discretion to waive it if the organization requests.
Okay, if it's only the PTA, that makes.
Yeah, it really is. Every other organization and I don't get too many raffles, but the other ones that I do get, and they're not like borough-related organizations, like the bowling alley. I think it's USBC, I forget what the name of the organization is, but like they're not like borough-related, so I don't waive their fee.
Okay.
But PTA, I mean,
So I'm probably just.
PTA, come on.
What's the year?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks for clearing that up. No problem.
I have a question on the bill list, if that's okay. On this first page, what is Penguin Management Incorporated?
The fire department utilizes an e-dispatch program, and Penguin Management is the vendor for that e-dispatch program.
So that's like the phone calls that they get?
It's a subscription that they have for a dispatching service. I don't know the specifics about it, but that's what it has to do with. It is, I guess, they have up to 50 licenses, which would be enough for the number of volunteers they have.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Marco absent, Ms. DeNoble?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes. Individual resolutions, 2023-205, award of contract for professional engineering services with CME Associations for Engineering Design through Construction Administration Services for Fifth Avenue Phase 1 Improvement Project. Make a motion to approve 2023-205.
Second.
Mr. Marco absent, Ms. DeNoble?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes. 2023-206, authorizing the execution of shared service with public safety answering point PSAP/9/11 agreement with the county of Monmouth. Make a motion to approve.
Can I ask a question on this one? What exactly is this? 'Cause I don't ever remember seeing this before, and it sounds like it has to do with like dispatch or.
We did it back in 2020. Greg, you actually wrote the resolution.
What is this for?
PSAP.
It's what's called a PSAP, an alternative receipt of 911 calls in the event the local dispatch office goes down.
So this is only if, for some reason, our local dispatch isn't working?
Yes.
Well, yes, but also, so not every town is considered what they say a PSAP, receives 911. So if you dial 911, it doesn't come to our police department. It goes to the county, and then the county relays that call to us. Okay, so there's not many towns that are PSAPs. Belmore's a PSAP. Well, maybe a PSAP. Not many towns are PSAP. So 911 calls go. Our shared service would be to get that relayed to us.
Okay. I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Okay, motion to approve 2023-206.
Second.
Mr. Marco absent, Ms. DeNoble?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes. Okay, there are no announcements, so we'll go to mayor and council reports. We can start off, I guess. I'll start with what I think was a pretty successful July 4th weekend. Went very well for the community. It was a rather kind of long weekend, and the weather reasonably cooperated with us, with the exception of the Tuesday concert, which we did postpone. It started thundering lightning, and then after we postponed it, the weather improved, of course. Got a lot of compliments on the fireworks display. So for those who don't know, we did change companies this year. I think we made a pretty good choice. It seemed like everybody was pleased with that. I do want to thank Office of Emergency Management, who really organized that whole effort around fireworks. It was Chief Rita and Bob Pearsall, who led a pretty extensive team. Some of those folks who were on the promenade from early morning through late night, making sure it was a safe environment. So very much appreciate that. All the way down to the specials. I know there was one special I saw her out there for probably 10 hours. So very much appreciate that. Couple of key infrastructure things going on. I want to first talk about Fletcher Lake Commission and just mention, for those who aren't aware, the north side of Fletcher Lake, the bulkhead there has been in disrepair for a long time. It looks like that's in the process of getting repaired. They got some funding to do that in Neptune, so we're very pleased with that. The Biazzi Center and the municipal building. The municipal building roof has been addressed, and we're hoping that, we're not hoping for rain, but the next rainfall, this will be the test. We've had some pretty significant issues on this roof, in this back room here and in the court area. The Provco, the vendor, basically thought they believed they pinpointed the issue, a couple of issues, and we'll see how it goes. We're in the process now of getting to the Biazzi. And then following that remediation, we'll get back into reassembling that building. Sunday was our second annual Park Fest. I think it was successful. We had good bands, food, vendors, tremendous amount of people in the community on Main Street, so that was a good event. We also had what they call the third stage. We utilized one of our restaurants, Uva, to be a third stage at their tiki bar, so that was an add to this year's festivities. Also Thursday night, we started last week the Songwriters on the Beach concert series. Had a couple of pretty well-known singers from what people tell me. I wasn't as familiar with them, but we had probably close to 1,000 residents and visitors at that event. So it was a great setting. It looks like hopefully if we have good weather on Thursday evenings, that's going to be a good event for us. Another big event this weekend that I mentioned, our Arts on the Beach, which is going to move from the beach again. King Lear is being produced by the Arts Council. We have shifted it over to the Firehouse. It'll be 6:30 sharp Friday and Saturday. Last on the whole area of events, Saturday we start the concert series that goes 8 weeks. It's early, 5 to 7 p.m., so it's a great opportunity to grab some takeout meals and participate in those concerts. Move to the library. Summer readings in full swing. Details on the library website. Friends of the Library are hosting a book sale Saturday, July 15th. This coming Saturday from 9 to 2. Usually get some great deals there. Rain date is July 16th. Friends of the Library are also planning a summer jewelry sale, so if you have any spare jewelry and want to make a donation, please do so. Tuesday, July 18th from 5:30 to 7:30. There's a community scavenger hunt. Families or small groups can register, have a point person, and meet at the library at 5:30. They'll receive some locations and clues, and there's a prize involved in that, so it sounds like a fun activity. Just have to have one cell phone in the group so that they can take pictures of the proof of finding the clue. Next Thursday, yes, the 20th, there's going to be a jazz band at the library, in front of the library playing, so that'll be very interesting, some more entertainment in town. And last is, the library has two museum pass programs. One is for the Thomas Edison Center in Menlo Park, and the other is Guggenheim in New York City. We can get those. You can get those passes by going to the library's desk. They've been provided by the Friends of the Library, so that's a great opportunity, particularly in the summer. The last thing, two more things I want to cover. I'll cover the first aid biweekly report. For the operational period, July 12th, the squad responded to 12 calls, 18 night calls for a total of 27 calls. Medical and 3 fires. Squad conducted 1 drill for safety and education of the membership. Squad supplied medical overwatch. for the 4th of July display. The squad also responded to 5 water rescue calls to provide support to lifeguards and first responders as well. We'd like to thank all citizens and visitors who participated in the Jersey Mike's sub sale over the 4th of July weekend, making it a huge success. The squad fulfilled 100% of the requirements for the operational period. From a fire standpoint, the operational period ending July 12th. The department responded to 3 requests for the department. The department conducted 1 training drill for the safety and education of members. The department provided fire protection for the 4th of July fireworks. Congratulations to Ed Hagerman for successful completion of firefighter training 2 course and state certification. The department filled 100% of their assignments for the operational period. Still looking for volunteers for both fire and first aid, offer free training to qualified associates. Anyone wishing to volunteer, please contact the borough on the borough website. Also want to mention the cooperation that exists between fire and first aid, allowing to keep our citizens' needs and medical care in place. Kind of an adjunct point on this is that I just wanted to kind of make a quick statement on this. Our beach is clearly one of the key assets that we are stewards of in this town, in this community. There's a mutual dependency on tourism in Bradley Beach and our beach. Our lifeguards, first aid, police do a great job of managing the beach. There has to, however, be respect for the power and sometimes danger of the Atlantic Ocean. We've had a few before and after rescues in the last couple of weeks, and one sent 2 swimmers from New York to the hospital, and I'm sad to say that one of those passed away just yesterday, a 19-year-old recent graduate of Army basic training, after hours swimming with 3 friends. It was low tide, calm waters, except for a rip current that overcame 2 of those people. One has been released and the other passed. We all know too about the incident in Avon about a month ago. That was a New York City firefighter that went in to save his kiddo pre-hours. Unfortunately, he was fully dressed when he did that, and he succumbed to drowning. So I just ask everybody to promote water safety. If you see something that on the beach before or after hours that looks not so good, please report it out. There's a lot, there's a lot of discussion on this right now amongst the police, OEM. I'm talking to a few mayors about it. You can have a conversation saying, well, let's take the hours up to 8:30. You're gonna have somebody from 8:30 to 9:30 swim after hours. There's no good answer to this, but we certainly want to at least exercise some discussion on it and maintain our vigilance. So I just wanted to make that final comment. Those are my comments for this evening. Councilwoman.
Ready. Shade Tree was John Weber. I unfortunately did not make the meeting, so John will do the report on that. There was no Board of Ed meeting, so I'll just do tourism this evening. In an effort to bring more business to Main Street, the tourism department is offering free promotion of Bradley Beach businesses, as always, but especially during a new program, Picnic in the Park Saturdays. This coincides with our Saturday in the Park concert series, and the goal is to have concert goers order some food for takeout and picnic with it over at the park. The initiative is no cost to businesses. Please reach out to Amy Hall at tourism@bradleybeachnj.gov. The concert series begins this Saturday in Riley Park with the Pat Roddy Band from 5 to 7 p.m. Next month, August 19th, is the annual Bradley Beach Pirate Day. This is always a fun event for kids and adults as they treasure hunt to our businesses in town. This year event will be followed by a reggae concert in Riley Park with The Verdict. Also, I'm working with tourism and some other organizations. We're mapping out events and costs for 2024, kind of doing an informal survey and see how things are going, like Park Fest. We have to see how much did we pay, how much did it take let's say that we paid Telegraph Hill Records $5,500. Then we have employees trying to get vendors to exhibit. So how much did that cost? Could we do it for less money? Could we do it so it benefits the residents and the businesses? The benefits, maybe it's fun. The detriments, well, there's noise, and some residents didn't like it in the red building because they had to listen to music all day. Food trucks, we're basically restaurant row here, so I felt like, why are there food trucks when we have all these great restaurants? I know in the old days, we'd have some music, and people would stroll on Main Street and get ice cream, orange drink, or food. They pay rent there all year. It just seems like not fair to have someone pay $100 and sell ice cream when we have the beach plum right around the corner. So just food for thought. Thank you. And that completes my report.
Thank you. Councilman Gupta.
I have police for thought, starting with Captain Arnold's report to me. I'm sharing this now with our residents. A subject was arrested for burglary to motor vehicles. A subject was arrested for a warrant. A subject was charged with criminal mischief. An officer from our K-9 unit was deployed to assist Long Branch at one of their special events. All of our K-9 officers were utilized during the borough's annual fireworks event, and officers responded to a report of 2 swimmers in distress in the ocean. Both swimmers were removed and transported to Jersey Shore University Medical Center, and as the mayor reported, one was released, and the other just recently passed. The other interesting thing, as I mentioned in our last council meeting, we do get monthly reports from the police across 24 different little statistical categories. And I find this interesting. I would just want to share it with the public. A couple of line items. Calls for service have increased over the last 2 months relative to the first 4 months of the year, about 70%. We're running around 60 calls per month for the first 4 months. We're up to about 1,000 a month for May and June. The other really noticeable spike in June was on parking summonses. So I presume this isn't all tied to our own residents, but perhaps to folks coming for summer vacations. But we were running around 30 or so a month. In May, we hit 90, and in June, we had 353 parking summonses. So the police are working overtime, literally, dealing with the summer crowds. July 4th weekend, I just want to echo the mayor's comments. It was great. I personally had family down and grandkids. They love the fireworks. I want to thank OEM as well, and our police, and our DPW. Great event, and the weather miraculously held up. Hearing reports of rain and even hail, and it ended up being relatively beautiful. I got in the ocean myself, and it was very comfortable water. So all in all, I thought it was a great weekend, and it was just a great showing for Bradley Beach. I have had certainly one handicapped individual reach out to me to try to better understand what we're doing for handicapped access at the beach. And I don't know if I addressed this to the mayor or to our VA, or perhaps to both gentlemen, but we did secure Moby mats, as everyone knows, and the mayor did align, I believe, up to 33 lockers for handicap access. But we talked about, and to date, I don't think we've made any progress on creating handicap showers. We talked about that a number of times. I don't know if that's in the works or not, but I'd like to ask the mayor and the VA at least to put that on a list of follow-ups. Specifically, I would think we'd want to try to create handicap showers at the 2 beaches where we've created the L-shaped Moby mats. Those being the mats that any person wheelchair bound might be able to try to reach the beach. It would make sense to have the showers at those same entrances. And then we'd also asked about pickup and drop-off areas, and I know this is a county road, Ocean Ave, but so it's probably quite a process intense to get approval for this, but I'd like us to at least make the effort to try to see if we could create pickup and drop-off areas for handicapped vehicles, maybe allowing 10 or 15 minutes stop to drop people off and then move on. Have we made any progress on either of those showers or pickup and drop-offs, or are we planning to?
I can't say anything regarding the showers. Regarding the pickup and drop-off, we spent time discussing it with the chief. There is something called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, MUTCD. That manual governs the signage that exists on county roads. And as I understand it, the initial attempt to be able to put signage on Ocean Avenue to that extent met with a uniform thumbs down. I don't know that we have ceased pursuing it, but at least the initial objective to be able to get that identified with signage seems to have failed.
And Mr. Fehrenbach, when did we last make that effort? Do you know? Is it recent or a few years ago?
It's within the last within the last month.
Okay, and we were told no?
Yes.
I can't imagine that the county would, I mean, it's hard to imagine that the county would be insensitive to creating handicap access.
It's not a matter of sensitivity, it's a matter of the regulations under which they operate under Federal Highway Administration rules, which require compliance with the MUTCD. Failure to comply generally results in the loss of aid. I've gone through this on several occasions with several county engineers in different counties, and they provide, what do I call them, parking spaces for handicapped, and those are generally provided at a ratio that satisfies the MUTCD and other standards. And when there have been attempts in other jurisdictions I've been in to try to reduce the number because of essentially the lack of use, they basically said to me, no go, we are not going to take a chance on losing our federal aid on our various county roads because they found us to be non-compliant in a particular municipality. I think that is the roadblock that we're running into.
All right, I would ask only that we look at alternatives. I don't know what alternatives maybe
We did,
off the county road.
we did talk to the police about for being very liberal with drop-off and pick-up, which we've got complete alignment on that. On the other point on showers, we are looking at some, a small grant that we might be able to pull a couple of things together in the, under the umbrella of ADA between now and July, so we can get that too.
Okay, it's timing kind of being of the essence, given the summer is waning. You think by the end of July we may have settled forward on that?
Yeah, but I'm not sure exactly how much we'll get accomplished beyond what we've done to date. We're just gonna have to continue to work on it.
And my related question is, you mentioned grant funding, but to the extent grant funding is just not available, I don't know the cost of building showers, but I imagine it's something within our capabilities, DPW's capabilities, if we needed to create the, fund the cost ourselves. I mean, it's like we have a lot of access.
I think you've made clear what your objective is.
Yes.
I don't have an answer for it at the moment, but I will investigate it and look into it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's all. I really am just looking for some definitive answer. On my last comment, at our June 14th council meeting, most of you are aware we approved the budget, 11.6% or 3%, whatever, tax increase. And none of us were happy about that. You know, it was kind of the best of a really bad situation. But in that meeting, we did make a motion that was approved that the mayor and our business administrator would provide us with a spend management plan within 45 days. I just want to go on record to remind everyone that 45 days, I looked on the calendar, I think it ends on a weekend, so I'm assuming the 46th day or so is Monday, July 31st. Are we relatively on track for that, Mr. Fairhoff, as far as you know?
I can tell you we're working on it. I reviewed the document that you presented to the clerk. It included many of the items that already were under consideration, and we have meetings scheduled and some work that I have already addressed to the finance people, and we're going to see what can happen with the conditions we're dealing with, and I'll be in a position to be able to report to you sometime at the end of July, beginning of August.
Very good, thank you very much. That concludes my comments.
Councilman Wood.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So July 4th was great. It cost money. Actually, I'm far from third, but fireworks were great. Songwriters on the Beach was great. I attended, but it cost money. And Park Fest was also great. The park was filled the other day. That cost money. In the case of the fireworks, I'm guessing we spent at least 20 grand on fireworks. Anybody have any idea?
We didn't spend 20 grand.
10 grand?
The contract is 15.
Okay, cool. 15 grand. Songwriters, I think we found out that that cost us $10,000 with paying the radio station, which is mind-boggling to me because they're a county, function of the community college, which is a county entity. So that's kind of interesting. We found out. Jane said, "Well, we paid for Park Fest," and I support the idea of finding out what all these efforts and what all these events actually cost the town. And I want to reintroduce the concept of cost plus. Now, cost plus came up a long time ago. Only a few of you were here back then, so I'm going to take you back. There's a guy named Al Gubitosi who was sitting in the audience, and I don't know if it was Memorial Day, or Lobster Fest, or whatever, but it was one of these festivals, and he said, it's kind of a pain, and it costs the town a lot of money, and we thought maybe we should relook at the relationship with whoever was putting on this festival. And let me know if I'm right. And, Al was on like a task force with a couple other people, and they looked at this. And I remember Mayor Engelstad using the term cost plus. Like, okay, we're going to charge these people what it really costs to bring this to town, but we're going to charge them plus. So that's everything. Do we have extra staff time to empty garbage cans or extra police cars or whatever? And it's all going to get covered plus. So cost plus was sort of the way we approached events. So I'm reintroducing the idea of cost plus, and I hope we can maybe institute that because look, we got a great town. People want to do stuff in this town. It's understandable. We should let them do it, but we should let them give us cost plus to cover that. So reintroduce that idea there. I will give a shade tree report, and I will start by saying we had the hottest week ever in the history of civilization on planet Earth last week. I hope everybody knows that. Recorded. Well, civilization and recorded history are kind of the same thing. Not only hottest week, we had the hottest day. This is averaging all the global temperatures across the planet. And then after we had the hottest day, the next day we had the hottest day ever in the history of the planet. So it's a good time to talk about shade and shade trees. But at our last Shade Tree Commission meeting, we had applications to remove 14 trees. 14 trees. Now, we planted about that many in the spring. So one meeting's worth of applications can wipe out what we did in the spring. And, granted, what we're planting in the spring is like a little, people are taking out trees, they're taking out big trees. We need to value these trees. We need to value our native trees, our existing trees. To state the obvious, I've said it before, but trees don't break sewer lines. And I'm going to add to that, trees don't convey squirrels into your attic. Trust me, if a squirrel wants to get on your roof, they know how to get on your roof. They don't need a tree to help them up there. If a squirrel is getting into your attic, maybe it's because you have vinyl siding, and you ever see what a squirrel can do to like plastic? It's just like, it's like candy for them. It's like hard candy for them. Or maybe your wood siding there's something wrong with it, but don't get rid of your trees, get rid of your broken siding or your vinyl siding or whatever. Just to add it to the list, the misnomers that trees break sewer lines and things like that. So in honor of that, as I mentioned before, the Shade Tree Commission is looking for trees that are older than Bradley Beach. We all know that James Bradley gave the land to the Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association to build a church in the woods. And we just want to find out what is left of those woods. The Shade Tree Commission is out to find out what's left of those woods. We want to find out what trees were here before our town sprang up after that church was established on Lorraine Avenue. So Shade Tree Commission is looking for big trees. They've got some guidance from our licensed tree expert on how to figure out, you know the species. You can do some measurements. You can figure out the age, approximate age of that tree. So we're simply looking for trees that are older than 130 years. So just a quick example: there's a white oak in the schoolyard in the front, like in the paved part, kind of near the Ascension Church, and which is not the Ascension Church anymore. Sorry. That tree is about 170 years old. So that's like a tree that was here when the Civil War, before the Civil War. So these aren't going to be street trees, so you're not going to drive down the street and see, maybe a few in the front yards, but chances are good they're going to be in backyards. So talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors. If you got a big tree, invite the Shade Tree Commission over. Maybe give them some lemonade or something like that, and they'll measure your tree. And then, a tree that's older than Bradley Beach, we're going to give you a little plaque that just says, tree older than Bradley Beach, or original Bradley Beach resident, or OG tree, whatever it is. And that way we will just recognize the trees that were here before our town. I think it's a great program. So look for big trees. And if you want to go see a nice big one from the sidewalk, walking in front of the old Jehovah's Witness, their hall, that is a big tree. So go check that out. Next to the Beast Restaurant Supply, check that tree out. Fletcher Lake Commission meets tomorrow night, so I don't have a report for them. I do want to talk about some serious things the mayor mentioned. I mean, the drownings. There's drowning in Avon, drowning at Bradley Beach now. I want to get clarity on what the deal is with our after-hour guards. I know we talked about that. We talked about the budget and the beach budget. I know we said we have after-hour guards, but is that only on the weekends? Do we know? Is that whenever it's 90 degrees? Is it ever during the week? Does anybody know?
The report from the chief lifeguard was that the standard hours for lifeguards during Monday through Friday is 9 until 5. The standard hours on Saturdays and Sundays are 9 until 6. There apparently are circumstances under which he may keep guards on for up to another hour if circumstances require. Circumstances required generally mean that there are still a lot of people on the beach at that time. The weather is hot, which is one of the reasons why they're staying on the beach. From a risk management standpoint, I'm not sure that that is the best alternative. I really believe, and in my discussions with him, he has indicated that among the lifeguard group that he's a part of in Monmouth County, that they have these discussions often, and the general feeling is that there should be sort of rigid times when one knows that lifeguards are available, and not have it potentially variable, and therefore not be sure whether a guard is on duty or is not. I've heard a number of suggestions of you ought to have guards on later. I can tell you from my own experience, and I'm sure most people in this room have witnessed it, that there will be people that will be swimming at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And you're not going to be able to have guards 24 hours a day. And there's a point at which you should be providing protection to people who are on the beach, such as exists here, 9 to 5, 9 to 6 on weekends. But to what extent are you going to basically stop expecting people to take care of themselves?
Sure. And I understand, and my understanding of after hours, I 7. I was just asking, is that only on the weekends, or is it, so you sort of said it's.
Yeah, it would only be Saturdays, Sundays.
But it's only Saturday, Sundays, so, okay.
Yes.
Okay, that helps, and we should all be aware. Nobody's ever drowned in this town, and there's a lifeguard on duty. So, to me, I hear what they're saying, but I also think, you know, do after-hour guards on weekends, especially these hot weekends. That's a good thing. A couple other thoughts. I noticed something at Songwriters on the Beach. There were so many people in that kind of horseshoe area. They were backing up and kind of hanging out, sitting on the dunes. We need to do something to keep them off the dunes. Maybe that's sort of.
I think it's in front of it, it's nobody was on it.
Oh no, they were on the dunes. I just want to let's have something to keep them off, and that would be good. And then I have a comment about dogs in Riley Park. Dogs are not allowed in Riley Park, but whenever we're having a festival, people bring their dogs. They're everywhere. So I want to take the temperature of the council and say, can we just pass something that says whenever there's an event in Riley Park, people can bring their dogs, and they don't have to worry about, am I going to get a ticket because I'm technically not supposed to have my dog in the park. So sort of like when the park's full of people, there could be a dog. I think the concern of the dog, doing its business and not getting picked up, I think that's kind of really slim when there's hundreds and hundreds of people in the park. So I think it's like kind of like a safe time to have a dog in the park. Just want to throw that out there, float that idea, because people do it, so I feel like it's making it legal. And that's my report.
Thank you. Second. Okay, we now then go to public comments. 5-minute single limit instance in public. Yes.
Dr. Tom McGuire, 610 Ridley Avenue. Thank you for giving me the trifecta, going first 3 times. I've never done this before. I just wanted to ask, you got to mention about the cost of the fireworks. What is that fund from? Is that from the beach fund?
That's a good question. That beach fund item, fireworks?
I will provide answers when the speakers are complete to the extent that I'm able. I don't want to take up their time.
Thank you very much for that. Well, as far as the beach, the truck on North Avenue, I know we've been having some issues getting it done. Just wondering what is going forward to get it done. Are we expecting to have someone there by the end of the summer, hopefully, maybe by August? And do we have a cost thus far with the events that were related to tourism are? I remember, Jane, there was a meeting or 2 ago, you had Councilwoman Jane, sorry. You said some numbers about some events. Do you remember what any of those were?
I actually sent an email to Greg this week asking for money in, money out.
Okay.
But you say they're going to follow up with you with that.
Okay, that'd be wonderful, because I just been concerned, because obviously cost is a big issue. And the Park Fest, just remind me, was that run by the town or an outside entity?
That was run by Telegraph Hill Records, and they were compensated $5,500 for that.
So $5,500 for that. Okay, so we know that one. Okay. And the music on the beach, what fund does that come from?
I believe tourism, and that's $10,000 for the season. It's $1,000 per evening.
So that's 10, and the last event you said the Park Fest was, how much was that?
$5,500.
So,
and then Saturdays in the park, the bands range from $2,000 to $3,500, and there's, I believe, 8 bands.
Okay. I'm just, Mr. Fehrenbach, if you could please answer the question at the end of this, because I did check the budget for the 2023, and I'm pretty sure the tourism budget said $20,000. Or 15. No, last year was 20,000, it's 15. So we've seen that we're excessively over our budget, so I was wondering where that money is coming from. And when are we, I really appreciate Mr. Fehrenbach, I think he's doing a great job, but when are we getting a new BA with a QPA certificate? I think it's a certificate? Or are we still in a hiring freeze until the lawsuit is over with?
Are you finished?
No.
Then what other questions do you
Oh,
have?
excellent. I've got a lot. Let's see. We asked this a few meetings ago. We never got an answer. Can we find out who is paying for the employment of Assemblywoman Vicki Flynn for the mayor's lawsuit against the council? And the last thing, I may have missed it, but what article was lost by the BA, the previous BA, there was an article, something was lost. What was that? I kind of missed that. Where it was about the bond ordinance, and then he said that there was something misplaced, lost. Did that cost us extra money because it was lost? No? It didn't? Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure it did. Okay, good. That was it. I'm all done.
Okay. The first question I think you were dealing with was the food truck at Newark Avenue.
Oh, it's the fireworks, actually.
Oh, the fireworks.
Yes.
Okay. On the fireworks, the amount of it was $15,000. It is appropriated in the beach utilities,
Okay, thank you very
and
much.
it's paid for through that utility.
Thank you.
In terms of the food truck at Newark Avenue, I already gave a in-depth explanation of that earlier.
Yeah. I was just wondering what's getting done further. So is there any way that we can advertise for it?
Let me just say that all of the people that I've spoken to so far have indicated that if they couldn't be in by July 4th, it wasn't worth it.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of some of the questions you raised regarding the various costs of tourism, you indicated, I think you need to understand that there is a tourism budget in the current fund. There is a special events appropriation in the current fund.
Where is that listed under? Because I was looking for that.
Under those words.
Special events?
Special events or celebration of public events.
Okay, and
is
you
what it's
happen to
called.
know what that, you don't know what that total is?
I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay.
But there is also a tourism trust. And the tourism trust is what is referred to in the Division of Local Government Services as a dedication by right. It is an item at the end of the budget that is approved by the governing body when they adopt the budget. And it essentially permits the existence of trust funds. And the trust funds have income and they have expenditures. And the question that Councilman DeNoble raised with me had to do with how has that fund been operating over the last 3 years. That is, again, something I don't know off the top of my head. And that is something that will need to be researched and will need to be understood.
And what funds that actual trust fund?
There is income from various portions, but I am giving you the answers I am able to give you. I do not want to enter into a dialogue.
Thank you. Okay.
The payment for the attorney for the mayor in his challenge to the ordinance is a charge against the legal services budget of the municipality. And there is a purchase order that has been placed for that at the mayor's request.
Okay. So we're paying for that.
The item that was mentioned earlier regarding the bond ordinance, I indicated that I had seen a memorandum issued by the former administrator to the finance director that appears to have gotten lost in.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Yes.
I missed that part. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Eileen Shishias, 112 Fourth Avenue. I noticed that there were shirts worn by guards, and Bradley was misspelled on the shirts. I just want to make sure that that bill wasn't paid from the, that whoever did the shirts, that are they entitled to get paid? That's number one. Number two, the shower issue hit a real nerve with me. And I thank you for bringing it up. We want to take care of the handicapped people. It is time for us to bring the showers up to current standards in our town. As many of you know, my family's been here for generations. Those showers have not been improved for generations. They are post-World War II looking showers. The lines are all the way down when it comes time when people need to leave the beach. The traffic flow to leave the beach is an obstacle. Please do your research. Get us showers that are current and manageable for crowds. Spring Lake has them on the boardwalk. Avon has the poles. I don't know what you have in mind, but we need current showers on our boardwalk, on our beach. And please do not ignore that issue. That was addressed when we had the strategic plan committee, and they had a plan, and it was never implemented. Please, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Nancy Meadow, Ocean Park Condominiums. Mr. Weber, I've said this before, I'm glad you enjoyed the fireworks. Thanks for pointing out climate change and smoke issues. You contributed horrendously by having fireworks, and I can think of so many better ways to spend $15,000. This is one of those things that should be out of the budget for so many levels. I learned, because I don't go to these things, that there was a employee, I guess, from the police department there for 10 hours overtime. Is that where we're at with that? Is that an overtime thing? Was that necessary overtime? It seems to me we have a lot of officers on the payroll, and I know other departments aren't allowed overtime. So we're picking and choosing our favorites. It's easy to connect dots. And Mr. Fennerback, I am sickened that you were not granted to do your job and released our Hugh and somebody else overstepped. I apologize on behalf of the borough. It really makes me ill and underscores the comments that I've made. And it is my opinion that this was deliberate because that person was against the church. And in all the times we brought up selling the asset, made it quite clear what that person's position was. I'd like to tell a story that I've told before, but it has a worse ending, about my friends that have been here for 70, 60 years, went on the locker list. When they checked on it several years ago, the person told them that they weren't on the list. They then found them on the wrong street. That person told them they gave them the wrong street. They finally put them on the right street at the bottom of the list. And now here we are with this company running our lockers for us because we have incompetent people that couldn't do it. It was too much. And at the end of last month, this is my opinion, and I have the right and freedom of speech. Yes, I do. So at the end of last month, they were granted a locker. And upon getting the locker, which was 30 days after everyone else got their locker, so basically we got them for 4 months, they got it for 3 months, 25% loss. They asked for a discount, and that person, or a person, said, we don't do that. This is not the kind of town I choose to live in. I find it very unkind. In addition, I don't understand how we're focusing on the whole Arts Council, which we pay for, and the other events, which finally somebody seems to be addressing. But what's never addressed on top of everything else is how we don't pay. And not only the fee of employees, let's get into the extra dumping fees of garbage. Do you have any idea how much extra dumping fees we pay? Pretty sickening to me, because we all know how expensive that is. And yet, of course, we the people don't get to know. And then again, I think I go back to, I could be wrong with the date. I'm pretty sure it was January 2022 when then Council President Sexton brought up a different form of government. That has never gone on the agenda. And I find that quite offensive, because I would like a different form of government. This particular one does not work for me. And can I make an agenda? How do I get something on an agenda? How many times do I have to ask for a different form of government? I'm just like ignored, and you know that if it took me 10 years to get around, I can be up here, God willing, maybe not for 5 more years, to sit and ask for the same things. In addition, who is in this room that receives funds from the borough? It's not been shared with me, not been shared with people on Zoom. You're failures. You succeed on a lot of things, but quite honestly, when it comes to common decency, it doesn't exist. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I think Ms. Meadows may have misunderstood something. When I talked about the RFP for 319 Lorraine, I indicated that the purchasing agent prepared the specifications. I asked her to prepare the specifications because she is the purchasing agent. She's being compensated for being the purchasing agent. And in typical municipalities, the purchasing agent is the party that would prepare the RFP process and monitor it and run it. So it was as the result of a request that I made. It was not as the result of something that was forced upon me, and it was a responsibility she had that I felt as if she should be carrying out.
Thank you.
So Ms. Meadows would like to say,
Yes, next,
who
please.
is it that can
Sorry,
the
you're out of
issue
order.
and not address
Sorry.
the valid artifacts that are there?
Sorry, could you please?
I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Hi, I'm Linda Duffy, 312 Brinley Avenue. I just wanted to bring your attention to the bills list, because I don't know, I missed it. And page 3, throughout the whole bills list, when it talks about uniforms, there's no discussion on whose uniform, what department uniform, except for the police department. They are the only department within this whole town that specifies who got what and where. They put the name there, that's on page 8. This was for classes this time. And I applaud them. We can't do that for all the other departments. I didn't even do the microphone. All right, that's one thing. And the other thing is about the short-term rentals. The people that live in the neighborhoods don't even know who they are. Why can't the house, not with a scarlet letter, but like put a pink thing in the window or something like that, so you know it's a rental house, and you can tell if there's 10 different people coming in every other day. Why should I have to like figure it out? Who do I don't want to be in everybody's business, but yet if you see a rental house, oh, it's a rental house, and the same people are in it, that's fine. But then you're seeing other people come in and out all the time. It could be my house, and it could be my family. But everybody in my neighborhood knows each other. But I don't know the people down the block. You need to designate the house. There's no list anymore because the portal's down, so you can't see if anybody got a permit for a rental. You used to be able to see that. You can't see it anymore. Why is that? Nobody seems to have an answer. It was great for me, myself. When I looked at the portal, I was freaked out they didn't take out the oil tank, because when they all come to survey your property, oh, there's barbed wire, bar under here, this has got here, there's nails in the deck. they can't tell you anything. But I went through the portal, and it said tank removal, so that's the only tank I could think of that was on my property. It wasn't a water tank, it was just that water tank, so I felt confident that it was done. But you have to go to the Borough Hall now and ask Pam all that information. So the portal was a great thing to have. Or you can tell when your permits were cleared. You can't even tell anymore. You have to go up there, and sometimes she's bothered because she's busy. And then they have to get up to the construction guys, the zoning people, or whoever it is, to close out your permit. What happens if you have a fire and your permit's open? And they lose the papers or something? You know, that's a serious matter for a person that, you know, is in a house. So, I don't know why they took it down. And the last thing I have to say is, the last scuttlebutt I heard about the Piazzi Center was the seniors are going back there. The last BA made it smaller. We don't fit anymore. We have grown to 32. So we can't fit into that small area, so we need to stay at the fire hall because they cannot allow them to walk up to the rec center. It's just too far. Some of them have walkers, they have canes. It's just not feasible for them there. So I'm asking if we can stay there. Can we? So I was told they don't want us. Who was that? The town or the fire department? I'm just asking because it's a big issue and I hear it all the time. I'd like a real answer.
We're looking at a couple of things.
What could be a couple of things? There's no other place in town. You stick us in the school? I mean, there's parking there. Well, thank you very much for your information.
Ms. Duffy? I'm sorry, you said on page 2.
No, page 3.
Page 3?
If you look at page 3, that's just, I don't want to go up, I'm afraid, right, you know. If you look through all
Come on,
the bills,
Cleo, approachable.
okay, if you look through all the bills lists, where it says uniforms,
Okay, I see what you're saying.
nothing is described. But if you go to page 8, it's not uniforms, but it's the police.
I see what you said. So in other words, you.
It
would
can
like
be
to see
added to the
The
bill.
department, what department, the
Correct.
uniforms are. Okay,
All right,
thank you. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, to answer the question of Ms. Duffy regarding the bill list, the union that represents the employees that receive these uniforms is different than the union that represents the police. The rules that apply to uniforms under one contract are not the same rules that apply under the other contract. So in terms of the bill's work and casual wear items, those are dealing with uniforms that are being supplied to public works employees, to other non-police employees, and that is an arrangement where there are multiple employees who are included in these groupings of bills being paid.
I understand that, but when you have a listing of socks, boots, shirts, t-shirts, even with the beach, it should say uniforms beach. It doesn't even say that, or it says DPW uniforms. You can tell where it's going because each employee is entitled to a certain amount of money per year for what they can spend for uniforms unless they're soiled.
Chip Shishius, 112 4th Avenue. The whole torturous process of our budget, which was then finalized and resulted in 11.6% increase, which probably could have been higher if we hadn't taken as much as we did from the surplus. But what that led me to think about is, with respect to the governing body, we have to pursue opportunities to operate more cost effectively with a greater sense of urgency. And the area I know something about, because of my work on the strategic plan, is the sewer infrastructure. This is a preamble to ask you what the status of the RFP is, but just to go back, we submitted a report as part of the strategic plan in December of 2019 with a number of recommendations, some of which are being implemented. But an important element of that was that the borough needed to retain consultants or to issue an RFP that would lead to having professionals, not we as volunteers, do a deep dive into the sewer infrastructure from an engineering standpoint and financial, and provide that information to the governing body so they could intelligently evaluate whether or not we would want to consider selling the sewer system or not. We never recommended that should be done because we didn't have the kind of information that a governing body would need to have. And I'm astonished that we went through one process with David Brown. He's ready to issue it. It didn't happen. Then we went through our next BA, and for a whole variety of reasons, this RFP was never issued. And now we're at this stage. And what makes it so frustrating is now, looking at what we've just experienced with maybe the highest percentage increase in the municipal budget for the county, probably among the highest in the state, we have to be more aggressively pursuing opportunities to look at whether or not we can operate, in this case, the sewer infrastructure more cost effectively. Maybe we don't want to sell it, but at least we have to take the next step so you have the kind of information as a governing body we need to have to make an intelligent decision regarding that. So having said all of that, I would appreciate knowing exactly where we are with respect to the RFP.
Mr. Mayor? Yep. Were there any other questions you had?
No.
The municipality received 3 proposals, one from Colliers, one from Remington Vernick, and one from CME. They have been reviewed and evaluated to determine comparability. The proposals were not necessarily similar, and so there was a need to go through and try to create an apples-to-apples comparison, a comparison of like elements. I completed an analysis of that. I submitted it to the governing body today, and they will, over the next 2 to 4 weeks, need to review that and determine how they wish to proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Brigitte McGuire, 610 Brindley. Around this time last year, the budget was passed because the challenged $300,000 was finally removed from it. Kim Humphrey, our former BA, mentioned that part of that money was because back pay, such as proper overtime, was owed to some beach employees. Well, I was just updated this past weekend that some of those employees haven't yet seen that money. So since we in fact did overspend by $300,000 last year, and employees who were owed back pay didn't receive it, where exactly did that money go? It's a question. Maybe it's time for the Department of Labor to take a look into things, unless, of course, Mayor, you are willing to publicly post all the numbers so we can see the details first. Mayor, back in early 2022, when I began trying to understand the Bradley Beach government through meeting and chatting with you, we had a phone conversation where you mentioned something along the lines of, people just don't want to know these things. They want to live their lives and they don't care what's going on in town. Well, I believe the newsletter you send out is a fabulous idea. However, I'm wondering if you think you're only speaking to those people you mentioned don't want to know anything, because your last couple of newsletters were extremely deceiving. You said that we are in sound financial shape and that our reserves are stable, when we didn't even fully pay our savings back last year by $300,000. That is the complete opposite of having stable reserves. We are also at an 11.6% spending increase this year, so we are not in any way, shape, or form in sound financial shape. You are sharing false information to the public by making these incorrect statements in these newsletters. You also mentioned that our taxes are not going to any events. Well, I have sound financial proof that for the 130th event, DPW and the police were paid directly by the borough. All events, understandably so, utilize employees, even beyond the tourism department, DPW, and the police who are paid directly from our tax dollars. So please start being honest with the public. It's not too late. I sat on tourism in the recent past, and I know we don't have the funding through tourism to fund events without making sure we can get creative on how to get some free entertainment and or finding vendors to pay, who can pay to offset costs. The BBVCA now is using tourism funds too. I don't see how this is possible. We don't even have the CO enforcement properly handled for all the money tourism can actually bring in. If we keep asking for the details of this money and it's not out for the public to see, then it's being hidden. Show it to us. The overspending is catching up to you, Mayor. I am asking for your complete honesty from here on out. It's not too late. Mr. Fahrenbach, what is the amount to date for the mayor's private attorney in suing our council? And for public record, if you have followed along, our business, meaning my husband and I, had to check in on our mercantile reimbursement today to say we will be told we'll be getting it this Friday. Yes, $150 has taken that long to get back after being wrongly charged. Thank you.
Thank you.
In response to what I think was the one question that Ms. McGuire asked regarding the mayor's attorney, we have not received a bill from the attorney yet, so nothing has been paid to that person yet.
Okay. What was the other thing I had asked you?
Was that regarding the first thing you were saying about 300,000?
Yes.
I'm not sure I fully understand. When you're saying that last year's budget was, you talked about $300,000 in last year's budget.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely sure I'm understanding what you're referring to.
Okay, so last year, once the budget was challenged by an extra $300,000 that was in salaries and wages, the administration finally took away that $300,000 that was stalling the budget for getting adopted. The budget got adopted without that $300,000. We shockingly overspent by $300,000. That didn't go back to our surplus last year. However, the reason we were given for why that part of that $300,000 was in the budget originally was because there was back pay owed to beach employees who worked overtime and they weren't paid properly. Like if they were owed time and a half, they were only paid time and not the half. That's how we were explained.
Okay.
So
let me see if I can explain this.
Okay.
You are focusing on a common number of 300,000.
Okay.
But there's no relationship between the two, or the three. The 300,000, that was an estimate based on limited information, according to my discussions with the prior administrator, was a request for an appropriation to cover a possible liability that she thought could possibly exist, but she didn't fully know and they had not done a complete calculation. But she wanted to be able to make sure that the municipality was protected in the event that something to that extent came to fruition.
Okay, so.
The budget for 2022 was not overexpended. The budget for 2022 was expended at a level less than was authorized, so there was not an overexpenditure. There was a reduction in the rebuilding of surplus that may have been 300,000, but that didn't have anything to do with an over expenditure, because an over expenditure would be something that exceeded the authorized level of spending and would have required an emergency appropriation to allow that to happen. So you're focusing on a $300,000 number, but they are dealing with apples and lemons.
Okay, so it's just a coincidence that there's a $300,000 number. But we didn't so did that mean we made less revenue then? That we couldn't pay back our anticipated surplus?
Effectively, it means that we came into 2023 with less excess revenue than the borough came into 2022 with.
Okay.
The conditions at the end of 2021 were, I'm not sure what the exact number is, but let's say it's 300,000, was $300,000 better than the borough ended 2022 with. But there was no over expenditure.
Okay, so when we borrowed that 1 million, that was to budget, right? Our spend was borrowing that 1 million out of the anticipated surpluses to spend in our budget. So we didn't pay back 300,000 of that, and that is solely based on not overspending and only loss of revenue. We had 300,000 loss of revenue. Am I making sense in what I'm asking?
Let me say, you're not making sense to me, and if you want to go through a discussion of that, we should do it privately
Okay.
to be able to put numbers on paper and look at budgets and be able to see it. But this isn't going to work.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, Councilman Gubitosi's okaying because I'm asking for approval, and he seems to say I'm making sense. So I'm not sure, you know, maybe we could all sit down, because if he thinks I'm making sense, I'd appreciate almost a mediator at this
He may be
point.
thinking of it in terms of GAAP. I'm thinking of it in terms of municipal account.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thomas J. Cohen, 612 3rd Avenue. Mr. Fernbeck, I want to ask you a couple questions here. With regard to the lifeguards, has there been any determination by JIF as to what we should be doing? Next question is, what is the tax, do we know what our tax rate is now for 2023? And if we don't, can you tell me how the mayor can post an all-in number of 6.3% increase if we don't have the rate? So again, those things will tie together. Has there been any follow-up on the one-way streets for Atlantic and Pacific Avenues? I did go measure those streets. They're 29.9 feet wide. The cartway alone should be 24 feet without parking on either side. And I did confirm that with Mr. Matlack tonight. So really, a two-way right-of-way should be ideally 40 feet. These are non-functioning roads. So that's the reason I'm asking that question, because there's been no follow-up on that. And in terms of the BA search, 4 weeks ago, at not the last meeting, the meeting before, the mayor said that the hiring was, and I quote, imminent. So, I don't know, imminent to me is not more than a month. So I'd like to know what the status is on that. And that would be a good start.
Mr. Mayor? There are three that I think I can respond to.
Okay.
Regarding the lifeguards and the joint insurance fund to which the municipality belongs, I cannot tell you what their policy is. I can tell you that under the JIF, it appears as if the lifeguards, the people who supervise the lifeguards, have had discussions on this, and what is appropriate in terms of timing. The general consensus, according to Mr. Johnson, in the discussions I've had with him, is consistent with what I said earlier, which is that there should be set times for the lifeguards. There should be notifications when the lifeguards are going to be present, and notifications when the lifeguards are not present, as the borough does.
To your point, I did hear that, but I'm asking about the JIP, because I'm looking at the liability that our lifeguards have, that we have as a municipality. So I'm just wondering if you could check with them to see what their criteria would be. You did answer all those other things earlier. I'm bringing it to just a different jurisdiction.
I think we can do that.
Great, thank you.
In terms of the tax rate, what the mayor is referring to is he's talking about levies. He's not talking about tax rates. I was on the phone yesterday with the county tax board, trying to find out if the county tax board had struck a rate for Bradley Beach yet, and when would I end up being able to get that rate, so I had an understanding as to when tax bills would be able to be issued. I was told that they were waiting on the state of New Jersey to develop their equalized rates and to strike rates. They had done so for a few Monmouth County municipalities, but Bradley Beach was not yet one of them. He believed that we would have a tax rate sometime within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, and that'll be all inclusive, library, school?
It'll be everything so that we can produce a tax bill, because the municipality collects the taxes for all taxing jurisdictions. The one thing I can comment on regarding your question regarding one-way streets is that I served on the Site Improvement Advisory Board at the Department of Community Affairs for the development and the final production of the first residential site improvement standards. As the result of literally years of study of what should be done, the residential site improvements standards came out, and they indicated that the proper size of a local residential street, not a collector, not an arterial, just a local residential street, should be 30 feet. From curb to curb, 30 feet, with parking on both sides. Because the assumption was that there would not be vehicles parked continuously on both sides of the street, and that cars would be able to weave back and forth down the street, and that it would provide a traffic calming device, thereby being able to reduce speed on local residential streets.
This is 29.9, so it's not 30. But I respectfully disagree, because in the borough of Bradley Beach, there's not enough. Those streets are parked all the time. I have a small SUV. I have to pull over when a small car is coming the other way on the streets. They simply don't function. So I would be happy to meet with you and talk about the residential site improvement standards. That would be great. And my other question about the imminence of business administrator.
I am not making an appointment. I can't tell you what the circumstances are.
The gentleman here can't tell me either.
The nomination hasn't been completed.
I'm sorry, the what?
The nomination for the position.
The nomination hasn't been completed. Okay, thank you very much. But it's not, is it imminent still for another month, or?
We don't have time for that. Thank you.
That's apparent. Thank you.
Anybody on board here?
Yes, we have Kristen Mahoney. Ms. Mahoney?
Hi, thanks, I just had to get myself off mute. Kristen Mahoney, 200 Lorraine. So, just going by two questions, Mr. Fehrenbach, or whoever wants to address this. So going off the 6.5% that the mayor mentioned in the newsletter, and then the 11.6% municipal increase in the budget, does that mean we're looking possibly at an 18.1% increase in taxes? Oh, that's great, Mayor. I saw you shaking your head, so I'm sure you can, looking at me like I'm totally a fool, so maybe you can explain it to me. Okay, and my other question is, do we have an update for 217 McCabe? What's going on with that property? Those are my two questions.
Let me see what I can do, Ms. Mahoney. The 11.6% increase was for the municipal rate itself. I believe what the mayor may have been referring to was a combined rate of all taxing jurisdictions, which included the 11.6% municipal rate, meaning that the overall percentage increase on an average tax bill would be less than the municipal rate because all of the other taxing jurisdictions are rising at equal to or lower numbers, not higher numbers.
Okay, I mean, to the average reader, I'll tell you right now, everybody thinks taxes are going up, about 6.5%, but, that's what people read it. And with 217 McCabe, that's been a big topic of conversation here at this council. The House has had a dumpster in front of it, it's an eyesore. We went back and forth in meetings, especially during COVID, over Zoom about what was happening with that property. Do we have any update as to what is happening with that property?
What I'm going to try to tell you is going to be sort of summary in nature. Mr. Cannon or the mayor may be able to build on whatever I say, but effectively the municipality has taken a number of enforcement actions against that property. Those enforcement actions have been nullified by various court proceedings. The municipality has worked with the fire prevention official, have worked with the health department in various ways in order to be able to reduce the adverse effects of that property on the neighborhood, and is continuing to examine the property to identify where there are potential violations of municipal ordinances or any other regulations that may permit appropriate enforcement actions. Mr.
Okay,
Cannon?
I appreciate that.
I think that's accurate. We certainly haven't forgotten about it. Tried a lot of things to try to resolve not just the code violations, but the appearance and aesthetics that it affects the neighborhood.
Right.
We are working on it. We unfortunately lost 2 different court cases that prevented us from doing what we wanted to do. But we have not forgotten about it, and we just met on it recently, as a matter of fact, to try to figure out what the next step is in line this court.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. Thank you, Mr. Fairmont. That was good.
We haven't forgotten, believe me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Paul Nishamkin.
On the champion for 11.5 Lorraine. I'm confused by the RFP for the demolition of 319 Lorraine. When has there been a resolution passed to allow, to ask for demolition?
Mr. Nishamkin, there has not been a resolution of the governing body authorizing demolition. This is a request for proposal to engineering firms to prepare specifications for demolition. The council would need to adopt a resolution awarding a contract to an engineer to prepare the specifications, and even that would not authorize demolition until such time as those specifications went out, contractors bid on those specifications, and the council took a vote to award a contract to demolish. That would be the point at which the governing body would make that decision.
It just seems foolish to me to spend more money on engineers when we really haven't had an open discussion about alternative possibilities for the future of 319 Lorraine, which was promised in January of this year. There was supposed to be a workshop discussion where we would go through all the possibilities. And there are many possibilities for this location. Why don't we do that before we spend money to an engineering firm to come up with specifications? And that's the first of my questions. Second question is, there is a tourism commission in Bradley Beach. And we've been talking about tourism dollars and budgets and money, and there seems to be a lot of questions about that. There's a tourism commission in Bradley Beach, but it has not met in over 3 years. And I'm not sure if the public is aware of that.
If I
Is
may,
any-
Paul, I did speak with Amy, and we're going to set up a meeting via Zoom soon, so you will be notified.
Thank you, but I'm just wondering why for 3 years there has not been a meeting, especially when there have been these issues about how tourism dollars are spent. You'd think that the commission would have some discussion on this. Thank you.
Excellent question, thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll move to adjourn the meeting. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Executive session? Executive session, not going to we don't push any.
No.
Oh, you put it on the No executive session. Can you make that announcement? Sure. There's no executive session tonight. The meeting is over now. Thanks, you did a good job.
Thank you.
I've only been in Roosevelt twice, and once I went trying to say, can I get into the school to see it?